All right. This is a lovely May 18th, 2025. And this is Penelope Flynn introducing you to your urban prospectors of Gotham, Otto, and James. And today, for their show on this, what is the weekend for Florida is the 20th of May weekend, and we are celebrating, I guess, the Emancipation Proclamation being announced in Florida on the 20th of May, which is what, Tuesday?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here. I'm Penelope. I'm here with Nikki. We happen to both be in Florida for this particular celebration. But today, a larger Americana issue, which is baseball with play ball, iconic and lesser known tales of baseball in New York City. So we have here James, who is our resident historian, native New Yorker, current New York resident, and Otto, native New Yorker, but currently resident of North Texas, here to give us their understanding of baseball and all of its ins and outs in the great state of New York. So, who wants to get started?
You
James?
said you said state of New York?
I guess the city of New York.
Mm-hmm.
There ain't no baseball in other parts of New York, James, and I'm aware
So
of.
then it doesn't matter if I say state because it's the only
No,
place in the state.
no, actually, one of the most iconic New York baseball teams actually started in upstate New York. I'll get to that later, but I want to ask everybody a question. Did any of you guys come with a birthday present?
So that's your birthday?
No, but
No.
you guys should have. Where's the birthday presents?
For who?
New York City.
What?
Yeah,
Are you kidding? Today's New York City's birthday?
not today, but the whole year. New York City was founded in 1625.
Okay,
Wow,
in what
that's
iteration?
nice.
In what
On what
iteration?
day?
The day I would have to look it up, but no, 1625 when the Dutch, I guess, incorporated New Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's not the same thing, man.
it was. Come on now, stop
You talk
trying
about
to wiggle.
You said
That,
Amsterdam.
stop trying to wiggle out of it.
You
Where's
ain't
the
trying to
present?
wiggle Amsterdam.
Where's the present?
I gave it to the mayor already.
The
Oh,
Amsterdam.
okay. You did. Okay. And what about the rest of y'all?
Where your present?
Oh man.
My
Yeah.
present? My present to New York is me.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, where's the return aisle? Because I got it.
Oh, the pain, the pain.
And it's not New York. It's New Amsterdam. So it's not even.
And
It's Amsterdam.
stop. It's 400 years.
Nobody
400
knows. Nobody knows what Amsterdam or New Amsterdam means, man.
No, if you look at our flag, you'll see New Amsterdam's colors.
Yeah, but not the word.
Okay, now y'all talk about Amsterdam and New Amsterdam and colors, but colors I want to hear about are Yankee pinstripes and Metropolitan blue, orange, and white.
Ah, okay. Well, can I give like a brief history of the origins in New York after? Let me just make with some adjustments. Hold on.
Sure.
And pinstripe is not a color though. So
White and blue.
So hungry.
Pinstripe.
I'm scared to bring my food in.
navy,
Yeah.
navy blue.
Which one are you doing? I'm afraid.
Maybe
Yeah, navy blue.
navy blue. Okay,
Right.
navy blue and white. Yes, pinstripe.
As opposed
But
to royal blue.
but if you were a real fan, I wouldn't have to tell you that.
Well, I'm
You
just
know what I
correcting you. Pinstripe is not a color though.
Yeah, well, it's a pattern. Yes, the pattern.
And the Mets are royal blue.
Hello.
Mhm. All right. Now that we've made our adjustments, let's get on with it. And are getting on with this. Explain to us now the history of baseball in New York.
All right, well, believe it or not, New York baseball actually started, I guess, maybe in New Jersey.
Hmm.
Okay. The first some what you could consider the first pro game was between the New York Nine and the New York Knickerbockers. Now these players, they were actually would be like and clerks and busboys and salesmen, during the week, and on their time off they would play baseball. Uh the first maybe official game within New York was played. There used to be a stadium at the corner of 110th Street and Fifth Avenue. If you look at that area now, there's a statue of Duke Ellington, but before that, it was a baseball field.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, in New Jersey, I'm sorry, not New Jersey. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, the first pro team was the Brooklyn Atlantics, who used to play in the area to play parade grounds of Prospect Park. Um, as far as like the first New York teams, okay, when you say upstate New York, what happened was you had the National League, right?
Hmm.
The oldest National League team, believe it or not, is the Atlanta Braves.
Hmm.
Okay, back,
Except they weren't in Atlanta at the time.
excuse me,
Except they weren't in Atlanta at the time.
right?
Where did the Atlanta Braves start out? The Braves.
They started out in Boston as the Boston Rustlers. They also had the name, I think, the Doves, maybe even the Bean Eaters, the Red
sounds right.
Stockings, the Red
Mhm.
Stockings. Because back then, professional teams
Mhm.
used to just be called franchises. You had the Boston franchises, the New York
Mhm.
franchise, Chicago franchise. But how you could designate the difference between the teams was by their socks, their stockings.
Ah.
Hmm.
Okay, so yeah, that was the first professional team of the National League. The first pro team was the Cincinnati Red Stockings.
Mhm.
Okay, they weren't guys that moonlighted at other jobs. They were actual paid pro players. Okay, and their name was the Red Stockings. It wasn't until a certain amount of time near the end of the 19th century that they just called themselves the Reds. But then in the 50s, during the Red Scare, McCarthyism,
Ah.
for a couple of years, they changed their name back to the Reds. I'm sorry, the Red Legs.
Red Legs.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the reason why they called themselves the Red Legs pretty much was they took that name from a Union Army unit that fought during the border wars after around the time of the Civil War in Missouri, and you had the bushwhackers, Quantels, Marauders, and on the Union side you had Redlegs.
Hmm.
Better than
Okay,
the Redskins.
yeah, oh,
Red
yeah,
Legs.
and if you go to the movie, what is it, The Outlaw Josie Wales?
Yeah, that garbage show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I didn't care for that movie neither. But the
Mhm.
supposed villains are the Union Redlegs.
Hmm.
Anywho,
Yes.
going back, you had once the National League started, you had the Giants and you had the Bridegrooms in
What in the
Brooklyn.
world is that?
The Bridegrooms actually they were the Superbers, the Brooklyn Superbers. Then it just happened one season. A bunch of the players got married, so the manager changed the name to Bridegrooms. Then once they got to around 1913, they reporters, sports writers started calling them the Trolley Dodgers. Okay, and then they shortened it to the Dodgers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. What it was getting to Ebbets Field and the field that they played before that. You had to cross. You had to get across the street to the stadium, and you had a lot of trolleys going back and forth. So people from Brooklyn people from Brooklyn's nicknames were Trolley Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people
Okay.
killed by trolleys. They used
Yes.
to have a if the trolley used to have a horse in front of it, a guy on a horse,
Yeah,
to warn people not to get out of the way.
yeah. And then for a time, for maybe the 1920s to the late 1930s, they were called the Robins
Why?
because their manager's last name was Robinson and everybody loved him, yada yada yada. So for a couple of years they were called the Brooklyn Robins.
Okay.
And actually for maybe 1 or 2 years they wore green instead of blue.
Why?
I don't.
Robin. I mean, I can understand red.
Yeah.
Robin Redbreast, but green.
Well, it might have been because at that time New York City had a large Irish population.
Maybe.
Okay, which takes us to the Yankees. Okay, the Yankees were originally the Baltimore Orioles. Okay. Then when the American League started to get together in 1901, they moved the franchise from Baltimore to New York City. And the Yankees played at a stadium up at Coogan's Bluff called High Top Park.
Hmm.
So the owner decided to change the name to the New York Highlanders.
Huh.
Okay. But being that New York had a high Irish population back
Mhm.
then, and Highlanders are associated
Got it.
with
Yeah.
the British.
Irish.
That wasn't working.
Okay.
Okay. Meanwhile, and High Top Park actually no, that was Washington Park. I'm sorry. Then they moved to High Top Park, which if you come to New York now, that would be Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. That's where they used.
Did they ever play in Highland Park?
Highland Park? No, this High Top, and then I think it was Washington Park. The Yankees was strictly based in New York City. Okay.
So how did they get the name then Yankees? How did that come about?
Well, they got the name Yankees because around that time we were getting ready to enter into World War One. Okay. And we're known overseas as Yanks. Yankees, Yanks.
Yeah.
The song "The Yanks are coming," blah, 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 blah,
Okay, yes.
Yeah. And so also the fact that the owner, Colonel Rupert, okay, and he was only a colonel in name only. He's just, and I tell you why he was a colonel in name only, because number one, he was too old to fight in World War One. He had the money to get designated a colonel. Okay, right up the block from me, you have Rupert Towers, and Rupert Towers actually used to be where the Rupert Brewing Company was at.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because you had Rupert Beer. Okay, and he was a big, he owned the brewery, I guess he was a millionaire.
That must be nice.
Yeah. So when the name Yankees stuck. Um, Meanwhile, with the Giants came about again, going back to upstate New York. What it was you had the American Association and you had the National League. There was no American League. Okay, what happened was the American Association had a team in New York that played along the Harlem River named, and this was the 1880s, named the New York Metropolitans, right?
Okay.
Okay, the Giants came about by taking the owner of the Giants owned the Mets, that version of the Mets. He took most of the good players from the Mets and another American Association team called the Haymakers from upstate New York, Gotham Haymakers.
Huh.
Okay, and he just took. He felt it was better, and he could make more money by just focusing on the Giants. So he took the best players from the Haymakers and the Gothams and the
Mm-hmm.
Metropolitans, put them on the Giants, put them on, I guess at that time the second version of the Polo Grounds,
Mm-hmm.
and basically those other teams folded.
Wow.
Okay, when it comes to players of color, the Giants actually were trying to be the first.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, they had. Oh God, I forget the black player's name, but they tried to finagle him onto the Giants, saying that I think the story goes they were trying to say he was Cuban.
Ah.
Like in Bingo
And,
Long.
right, and,
Right.
and they tried to they told him, listen, if anybody tries to talk to you, just speak gibberish, you
Yeah.
know, or like you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And this was John McGraw, the manager, but somewhere along the line, the charade or ruse or whatever you want to call it didn't happen. And the commissioner of baseball, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, he was like, He said, no, we told you guys, all major league teams, no black players, no Negro players. So the Giants still tried to get around it. What they did was they got a Negro League pitcher named Rube Foster, and he was the pitching coach for the Giants for a certain amount of time.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the Giants tried to break the color barrier. Of course, the Dodgers with Branch Rickey, because Branch Rickey was trying to integrate baseball when he was I believe, manager of a minor league. I think the Western League or something like that. But again, he was stopped. He didn't bring it up until I guess that's 1946, 1947 with Jackie Robinson. And even then,
Now, okay. Now,
yeah,
this year is what? What year is this?
1947.
1947.
I'm saying when they first tried to do it.
When he first tried to do it was back at the turn of the century.
Wow. So it took that long for them to actually do it.
And the person that you want to blame for all of this, and believe it or not, he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame because he was the first player to get over 3,000 hits, is Cap Anson. Okay, he's the MF, excuse me. He's the one that started all this because 19th century, you had blacks playing in the major leagues. Okay, the most famous was the Walker brothers. I think they played for a major league team at that time, either Michigan or Minnesota. And when they came to play the Chicago White Stockings,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now don't think that those White Stockings are today's Chicago White Sox. They're not.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They are that team back then are actually the Chicago Cubs of now.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because see, again,
Okay, okay, wait. Let me back it up. Okay, let me ask
Mhm.
this question. Now
Yeah,
you're just saying that they have these black players. They are playing on these teams. This is what, turn of the century?
yeah, the latter
Well,
half of the 19th century.
so why are we saying then that it's actually 1947? Why don't we look at these people as actual players?
Because back then the leagues were very, very fluid. Players came and left, teams folded, teams, you know, relocated. It was very fluid when it came to professional baseball. I mean, for decades, you had the West Coast League out west, okay, because um, there was no there was no San Francisco, obviously no Dodgers, no San Francisco Giants. There was a San Diego Padres, but it was a Pacific Coast League. So that's why when you go into baseball's history, it's you really have to dig, okay? And what it was there was a game against the Chicago White Stockings, who became the orphans, and also the Chicago Whales, and then the Cubs. Um, and when Cap Anson saw that was black players on the opposing side, he said no. He said no, we're not gonna play against them
And why not?
because again, back coming from the Civil War, out of the Civil War, you still had that vicious, visceral racism. Okay, you still had that vicious, visceral racism, even with northern white people.
Yes, it's true.
Okay, I mean it wasn't as violent as the South, but it was there. Of
Right.
course, if you were a black person in that lived in Indiana back then, because Indiana was just as vicious as down south. You
Well,
know.
Indiana was that place was a capitalism was the capital of the KKK.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. At one point, Indiana had the most. I think it had like 1 million members of the Ku Klux Klan,
And no one would
more than
think,
the South.
and no one would think Indiana would be that, but that's the history of
Right.
Indiana.
You
I
know.
would think they would be that way. I mean, especially because I don't know like specific instances, but it's never been a place that I looked at and said, "Hey, that looks like a cradle of what is it, diversity and
Well,
as they say."
well, there's a saying that Indiana is a southern state masquerading as a northern state.
That sounds about right then,
You
huh?
know, but getting back to with baseball, yeah, all of this is Cap Anson after he said that and he petitioned other teams in baseball. They said, okay, we'll go along with that, and that's when Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the commissioner, his famous saying was, "As long as he's commissioner, there will never be a black baseball player playing pro." Okay, which I hate to say it. I hate to say because I'm a Yankee fan. George Weiss, during the time of when Jackie Robinson was integrating everything, George Weiss, he was the general manager of the Yankees. He
Oh,
said as long as he's general manager, there will never be a black player on the New York Yankees. You know,
Wow.
and see, everybody thinks that Elston Howard, which he was, Elston Howard broke the Yankee color barrier. Okay, before him was Vic Powers. Okay, Vic Powers was a first baseman, outfielder for the Yankees, and they pretty much let him sit in the minor leagues for most of his career.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, and their excuse was, oh, he's a bit of a problem child. He has an attitude problem. Nah,
You
they
know
just,
what? Attitude problem. A black man that says why?
you know.
Yeah, it says a
So
black man says why. And okay, he's an attitude problem. How
yeah,
dare you ask me why?
yeah, exactly. You know, and that was because I hate to say the Yankees, the Phillies, and the Red Sox, they were the last to integrate.
Wow. Isn't that a shame?
Yeah, yeah, they
Well,
they would.
the Red Sox, especially. I mean, that city is racist to this day. They call their own players at Fenway, call them out racist names.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
fans have to be removed from the
Hmm.
audience. You know, so it goes on with them. But you know that I mean, to me, baseball doesn't begin until Jackie Robinson. Everything else is fake.
Yeah, because but it's again, it's like trying to what do you to it's like to unlevel the playing field. I know it's kind of if you think you're that good, then why don't you play against everybody, right?
Yeah, and you know the thing about it is that what see the thing about with Jackie Robinson is that once he once he crossed the color barrier, and a year later Larry Doby did it for the Cleveland
Mhm.
Indians. That was basically the nail in the coffin for the Negro Leagues.
Well, that's another issue, isn't it?
Yeah, you know
And
that was
how many Negro League teams were there at the time?
at the time there were quite a bit of Negro League teams. You had the New York Black Yankees.
Hmm.
You had the New York Cuban Yankees. Oh, I'm sorry, not Yankees, Cuban Giants.
Hmm.
Okay, and what it was when, say, like Yankee Stadium, when the Yankees would leave town, go on
Hmm.
the road, the Negro League teams would come and play their games. Um, I guess it was the same thing with the Polo Grounds and Ebbets Field. You
Hmm.
Well,
know,
what could have happened was the same way that the National League incorporated the American League. The American League is known as the junior circuit. But what they could have done is incorporate some of the Negro League teams as actual teams. Just like you see franchises incorporated, like the NBA incorporated the ABA, and the National Football League did it with the AFC or AFL. You could
yeah,
have done
well,
the same. You could have done the same
Yeah,
thing
but
with
the
with
thing
Nick.
is, but they didn't want to make a whole bunch of black millionaire owners, right?
yeah, and with the um actually with the NFL had no other choice but to merge with the AFL, because at that point the AFL was really killing them. The AFL actually could have went on its own because it was in separate, sustainable cities. With
Hmm.
the NBA, that was supposedly a merger, but really it was four ABA teams basically paying ransom to join the NBA.
Hmm.
That's why we lost. That's why the Nets lost Julius Erving.
Hmm.
Because Rick Bowe, the owner of the Nets, he didn't have he didn't have enough money to pay
Don't
the
retell that story, please.
no,
What?
no, he didn't have enough money to join the NBA. So he's like, well, how can I make some money? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll send Dr. J to the Phillies.
No, Dr. J to the Knicks. To the Knicks. He had to pay ransom to the Knicks, and the Knicks said, "No, we don't want this guy, Julius Irving. We want money."
Well, see, you know what though? Even if with that, the Knicks were no go from the start because where he had to, I tell you where he had to pay money to the Knicks. He had to pay money because what they call territorial rights.
That's right.
Mhm.
Well,
Okay,
the thing is though, James, is that they could have done the same thing with the Negro leagues. Just have them they pay ransom, and if you don't have enough money, you get up enough money, or you give people a deadline to get money. So these are, to me, there were ways to incorporate these entities.
Mhm.
I
And
well,
go ahead.
yeah, I listen. To me, the racism was so vicious back then. You know, present company with today's America accepted.
Mhm.
But no, the racism was so bad that I just couldn't see the Negro Leagues merging. Think about it. This is a society, especially back then, that would drain a swimming pool all because I think it was either Lena Horne or Dorothy Dandridge stuck their toe in the pool.
Mhm.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's it's an irrational craziness. So the good thing is though, that last year Major League Baseball said that they're going to all the records that they could that were compiled in the Negro
Mhm.
leagues. They're adding they're adding those records. They're merging, incorporating those records into Major League Baseball's records.
There should
As
be.
well, they should.
There should be,
Yeah,
but it's not a perfect fit
But
because
it's better than what they've got.
you're not talking apples to apples.
right,
But
right,
it's the best you're going to be able to do, I think, because you never have Babe Ruth at his prime going up against Satchel Paige at his prime,
right, right.
and so basically the the racists made us lose out on that.
Mhm.
I wanted every fan who's a baseball fan wanted to see it, and
Yeah,
so one of the excuses they had against integration of baseball is the fact that one of the bogus excuses. Well, you won't have the fans, the kids, they won't be able to have as a hero or a black player or anything like that. They won't be able to associate. Jackie Robinson jersey was splattered all over New York City because he was
yeah,
a good player.
exactly. And anybody that says that, that's just BS because I've heard on sports radio. In fact, oh my God, I can't. Let me put that aside. Um, when you listening to talk radio, you'd be amazed that of grown-ups that grew up saying that they worship Darryl Strawberry.
Yeah.
Okay, they worship Doc Gooden. Okay,
Yeah.
they wanted. Oh, that's it. When Willie Mays passed away, this man called up WFAN, and he was actually starting to cry because he said that growing up he worshipped Willie Mays.
Mhm.
Okay, and one day he went to his father and said, "I want to get a baseball jersey with Willie Mays' number." And his father basically told him to get the hell out of here. You're not gonna get a jersey with the number of a black player on it.
Mhm.
And he said that it hurt his feelings to this day. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So yeah, I mean, come on. That's one thing about sports. You have white kids that wanted to be like Michael
Yeah,
Mhm.
Jordan. You have uh, white kids that want to be like back then Gail Sayers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's
You
right. And
know,
you got black kids that want to be like Joe Namath.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you stole these racists. They stole from us. You know, they stole from us so much pleasure and joy.
Well, I think the
And
biggest problem to me, well, one of the big problems, to me, is that when you say that you live in a meritocracy, and then you don't want people to be able to play the game at all, so that you can continue the the mythology that these people have earned what they have by merit when they have not.
Well, that's what the American system was about up until recently. It
Hmm.
was if you played by the rules,
Right?
if you drank your milk, ate your vegetables, got eight
Yeah.
hours sleep, eat your Wheaties,
Yeah.
okay, you can grow up to be like this star
Yeah.
athlete or whatever. If you went to school
Hmm.
and okay, case in point, I hate to go off topic, but I
But go
have to
on.
because I'm so mad. Here you had a woman that played by the rules. She went to college. She majored in library science.
Hmm.
Okay, and she worked her way up to becoming the head librarian at the Library of Congress.
Hmm.
Next thing you know, these people come in, kick her out, and they replace her with somebody, a lawyer that knows nothing about libraries, a librarian, probably hasn't even cracked, except for maybe a law book, hasn't read a book or anything. So who's zooming who here? You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, it's all about. I mean, which is, in all honesty, I think people should do a little bit thinking about this. I mean, it's like you say, in sports, at least in the old days, it was about who did it best. The only way that they could keep you from showing that you're best by keeping you from playing the game.
yeah,
Yeah,
and baseball, and that's why once again going off topic because we're talking about baseball here, and that's why I was so ashamed as at a lot of the Knicks players when Jeremy Lin started to play.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah,
so
I
ashamed
was really, I truly was
of
too.
the attitude and the behavior of the black ball players. I just it's
It's
like
stunning,
this is our
stunning in a
this
negative way.
yeah, this is our territory. What are you doing here? Go back to doing Asian things or something. We don't step into your territory. You don't step into ours. It's like you got to be kidding me.
yeah,
You
that was
know,
totally stupid.
So
That was totally
disgusting.
stupid. It
It was
was.
and
It
what
disgusting.
it's
was.
depressing. And it's like today it's like you got all these. You have a bunch of foreign players here now who didn't even go to. They didn't play the McDonald's high school tournament. They didn't play. They didn't go to the normal routes
Mm-hmm.
of the thing that the curating that
Mm-hmm.
basketball players go through, and so that's been broken to a certain extent. You have people who are like a Jokic or like a Nowitzki or even like a Doncic
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that don't go through the normal McDonald's All American and then they go to the NCAA and et cetera, et cetera. Then not going through all those rules, but then you have black players too who play by the rules like a Jalen Brunson who go through the NCAA, wins the NCAA championship
Mm-hmm.
twice, all American college player, and he doesn't even get picked into the second round. So a lot of things are in it. I think somebody said something with Dallas getting the first pick in the NBA draft for this year that a lot of it involves a lot of sports still involve race.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. It's almost inescapable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at what happened uh, um, a couple of days ago at City Field. You have this player, kinda, right? I forget his last name. He has
Falefa.
Falefa, right.
Yes.
A lot of people didn't believe him that he
Mhm.
was related to Ralph Kiner, who was a home run king with the Pirates and Mets
Mhm.
broadcaster, because of the fact that he looked slightly Asian and he came from Hawaii.
Yep.
And it took Ralph Kiner's son to finally
Mhm.
come to City Field, because Falafel played for the Yankees and now he's with the Mets. No, I'm sorry, he's with the Pirates.
Mhm.
And he finally had to set the record straight and say, yeah, he's a kind of distant cousin.
Mhm.
He's part of the Kiners from another part of Pennsylvania, but still, he's family.
Yeah.
Right. To Ralph Kiner.
You
And you
something?
remember, if you're a Met fan or once a Met fan or baseball fan in New York, you couldn't escape Kiner's Corner,
Yeah,
which was
yeah.
it was a post game show before
Hmm.
post game shows became a thing.
Yeah.
Something?
Kiner's Corner was a post game show after each Mets game. Ralph Kiner, although he never played for the Mets. He
Mhm.
was a broadcaster on Channel 9. He just do Kiner's Corner, and it was, as a kid who just learning baseball, trying to figure things out. He was so simple minded. Ralph Kiner must have been hit in the head 1,000 times, I guess, by a baseball.
Well, yeah,
But his shows were so simplistic, and they were
yeah,
so off topic about things. But it was great for us
yeah. It
kids.
was great, and I'll be the first to tell you that since then, the theme song, "The Kindest Corner," has stuck in my head into perpetuity. It's I
If you're
can't.
gonna have
It's
something stuck in your head, that's an okay thing to have stuck there.
Yeah, and it was funny because for the Mets, Ralph kind used to butcher. I mean, if you guys think that I get into Norm Crosby mode,
Ha.
listen to Ralph Kiner, because he used to butcher. He used to butcher. He's supposed to read ads for certain products during the game, and he would mess it up. And
Hmm.
then he would drive person crazy because you're watching the game and something exciting on the field happens. And he's like, shades of this and
Yeah,
shades of that.
Ralph. Yeah,
And meanwhile, with the Yankees, you have Phil Rizzuto.
that's another character. Yeah, him.
Yeah, he
He's
would
the
be
him of the
holy
holy cow.
cow.
The holy cow.
Yeah, and,
And
the
I
thing.
find myself saying that now. Down here
Mhm.
I say holy cow, and I wonder if people look at me and say, "What the hell is he talking about, holy cow?"
Yeah,
But I say holy cow because it's incorporated in my vocabulary. But
Mhm.
I think James, getting back to the Dodgers, when the Dodgers 1947
right.
uh, had Jackie Robinson, and then the Dodgers left New
Mhm.
York, and then for a long time, I guess from the Great Migration,
Right.
black baseball fans had really no place to go, right? So what did they do? What before the Mets came around?
Okay, what black baseball fans did from 1947 to 1962 is they did what a lot of Brooklyn white Dodger fans did. They would get on the train, go up to the Bronx to Yankee Stadium, and they didn't care who the Yankees were playing, whether it was the White Sox, the Tigers, the Indians. They would root for the White Sox, the Tigers, or the Indians against the
Wow.
Yankees. Yeah. Some some black baseball fans started just to focus during that time on individual players.
Mhm.
Okay, because that's something that you'll find in the Dominican community. With the Dominican community and before them, like with the Puerto Rican community, they focused on more on the player than than the team. or laundry, as people would say. In other words, if let me think of if Ernie Banks, okay, because he
Mhm.
was coming to prominence with the Cubs during the late '50s, they would root for Ernie Banks. Okay, I remember it still being in effect during the '60s because the hero to the black community at that time, Willie still had juice, but
Mhm.
now you had the up and coming players, and I remember it was a love affair with Bob Gibson.
Mm.
Yeah, Bob Gibson was.
Bob Gibson, I could Roy the barber that I used to go to. You made sure not to go get your hair cut when the NBC game of the week is on, and Bob Gibson is pitching because, excuse my friend, he'd fuck your hair and your neck up.
You leave
Okay.
leave the thing running on your neck.
Yeah. You know
Oh
what I'm saying?
man.
I remember, I kid you not, I remember like yesterday, I went to Roy, and it's funny because Roy, he was Mr. Party Man, you know what I'm saying? But he got the job done. So I go to Roy and I sit down, and they put the sanitary paper and
Mhm.
all that stuff, the pin. He's putting the pin to connect, the smock and the
Yeah, yeah.
sanitary paper, and he's watching Bob Gibson pitch. Oh boy, Bob Gibson threw a strikeout, and that pin went right in the back of my neck.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And he's like, oh, sorry, son, sorry,
So,
son, sorry.
sorry.
No, people don't remember Bob Gibson, but Bob Gibson changed the game of baseball.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
the mound used to be higher than it is now,
yeah.
and and lowered. And one of the reasons it's lowered is because of Bob Gibson.
Bob Gibson. Yep, 19. I guess it was 1968. They lowered the mound because up until then, pitchers were dominating. I mean, my God.
Especially Bob Gibson's like, I remember the Tim McCarver who used to do the play by play for the New York Mets
Hmm.
told the story of when he was catching Bob Gibson. And
Yeah.
he thought Gibson was in trouble, so he went out. He walked out to the mound, like catchers do, and just to talk to the catcher, give him a breather. And Gibson's like, "Take your ass right back where you came from."
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm.
Gibson was the man,
He
and you
was.
always, as a kid, I don't know from Bob Gibson. I know New York stuff a little bit,
Hmm.
baseball, but I wasn't too interested in baseball. I know the Mets were the team of my family because of the Great Migration. So it's like the Mets were the team. So Bob Gibson, when he pitched against the Mets, it was always a big deal. But
Hmm.
I remember him from the Primatine Mist commercial for the most time, for the most part. So I'm
No,
Bob Gibson. I have asthma.
yeah. Oh well, I would say my first sip of Schaefer beer was sitting Saturday afternoon. My father was watching the NBC game of the week, and Bob Gibson was pitching. And my father, I'm looking at this stuff in the glass. It looks like piss. Hey, you want some? Try some. Yeah, I took a sip, and I was like, oh, nah. But yeah,
But
so
Bob Gibson was the man, and
he
people talk
was,
about him
yeah,
the man. And I was surprised when I heard the Primatine Mist commercials. I said to myself,
right,
"This is the voice of a man, the man."
right. And it kind of, that gave him feet of clay, and just the mere fact that he has asthma, you're like, wow, he has
Yeah,
him
this
of
is the
all
man's
people.
man.
Yeah, cause, cause,
That's what you all thought? That just because he had asthma?
No, for me, no, it wasn't an asthma thing. It was his Bob's voice wasn't it wasn't like, everybody said, as a kid growing up, this is a man's man. This is a guy he won't take no gruff for nobody. If you step in and you do something he don't like, the next pitch is coming at your head.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and actually, I could. Maybe it's me, but if you were to listen to Bob Gibson talk and Jackie Robinson, their voices are kind of similar, a little
Really?
Yeah,
slightly high pitched.
kind of squeaky.
Well,
Yeah,
maybe that's
kind of.
well, because maybe that made white people feel more comfortable.
I think it's just the way they talk.
Not Tim McCarver, because Tim McCarver tell you when he was a rookie and he get on the team bus, Bob Gibson tell him go sit in the back.
Yeah, Bob
No,
Gibson
but
was
I'm just saying that you have these people, a lot of the owners and stuff like that, that do not want like a black guy talking such a way that white people would feel intimidated.
I don't think that would stop Bob Gibson.
But what I'm saying is it's not what stop him. I'm not talking about what he says. I'm saying the tone of his voice. That if you think that people listen to the tone of his voice, it doesn't sound like, I'm coming in there with my Avery Brooks baritone, such that people are, kind of trembling in their boots. If these are the like first guys that are coming out the box, they want, the people that, are watching this, they presume are watching it, to feel comfortable with them. That's what I think.
It could.
No,
I think it's just his natural. I think it's his natural voice. I don't think.
But listen to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying
I understand.
That they could have picked many people for that, and that sometimes they choose people based on the fact that they want their crowd to be comfortable. A certain type of black man that they want. They may not want somebody who looks like, I don't know, let's say, a person like an Adonis body, like, Aaron Judge, that may be too intimidating for people.
Okay.
No,
Okay, well, put it this way: if you're talking about like commercials,
well, I'm just talking about just seeing them. I'm just like seeing people play generally,
Oh no, well, if you're talking about commercials, yeah, probably because I wouldn't see Primatine Miss hiring Gates Brown from the Tigers back then.
Gates Brown.
Gates,
Wow. Yeah, but you can't put Gates Brown in the same category as Bob Gibson. I think it's just some people just have high pitched voices. That's all there is.
I'm not saying that the thing about the high pitched voice. I'm saying that if these people are choosing between a black man who's got a well-modulated baritone voice or one who has a more high-pitched voice that does not sound as intimidating, that they may lean toward picking the one that has a voice that is not as intimidating.
And that may be true, but the person with the baritone voice need to have a 1.2 ERA.
Yeah,
they don't. But that's the point. But that's the point, though. No, they don't.
No, I understand I understand what you're saying, but if that was the case, you wouldn't have had Mean Joe Green doing, what was that, Coca-Cola commercials?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but I think what I'm saying is this: when these individuals are picking people to play, they can pick pretty much anyone. And if what you all are saying is true, then black players were playing at the turn of the century. So they didn't, because they didn't want your black face or any other part of your black body playing on their field. And it had nothing to do with how well you played, because if it did, then they would be playing again at the turn of the century. So anything else that whatever reason it is that they pick whoever it is they picked, it has nothing to do with how well they play. I mean, the reality is you could have gone to the Negro League or anywhere else, thrown a rock and hit a black player that was better than half of the players that were playing in the league at the time.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be true, but to me, somebody like Bob Gibson, the Willie Mazes, the Hank Aaron's of the world, those are baseball gods.
Of course they are. But you know what?
Just saying,
what I'm saying is this. But what I'm saying is this. I'm saying, but you listen to what I'm saying. There were other baseball gods, and they just weren't picked.
Yeah, I'm certain. What I'm saying is, just like anybody else, there's people today that you think were, intimidating ball players or intimidating whatever. They got squeaky, kind of high pitched voices. That's just. I think it could be just happenstance. You could be
Right.
right.
And I mean, and I think I understand what you're saying. I agree. Some people just have squeaky voices. Some people just have high pitched voices. But what I'm saying is that you had so many black players who were excellent at what they did. The low voice, high voice, medium, whatever, they were not picked at all because they were not picking them not because of their voice, one way or the other, but because they were black. And then when they decide, okay, that we're going to pick somebody who is a black person, when one of their rationales for not having black people play is, well, we don't want to put, somebody out there that these, young Anglo kids is not going to want to buy a t-shirt, sweatshirt, a jersey. How they going to look at these people and see them as a hero, right? So
It could
if
be,
you are
but
trying to script a certain narrative about who people are and how they do a thing, again, you have somebody, who is like Jackie Robinson, who they say, in and out of, clubhouse, whatever, he had to put up with so much in the way of insults, and, having to put up with so much in the way of insults and putting up with other people's nastiness. He was picked because of that. There were other people who could have been picked who just did not have in their mind the type of personality that they could hold their tongues, just kind of shut things down. So I am not in the position to say right now that the baseball players, after, we breached the color bar, that the ones who first breached the color bar were not necessarily chosen because they were the best player. They were chosen because they were acceptable to
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but you also have to understand that Jackie Robinson majored in other sports. You know, he, I think he ran track. He played
right,
football.
right,
And
uh-huh,
he was just such a force
right.
and just such a good
Absolutely.
athlete.
But I'm saying is this. What I'm saying
Right.
is this. What it does, it falls into this, and I know it's a New York thing that we're talking about, but the black excellence thing. That you got to be 5 times as good just to be able to be on a team with people who are not as good as you. That's what it is to me. You
Yeah,
know.
and see,
Mhm.
that's that's the thing about it. Back then, that's pretty much how you had to go about it. You had to be 5 times better. But we also found out that a couple of years later that wasn't necessarily the case. Does anybody remember Hank Aaron's brother?
no.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Interestingly, I saw a documentary. I mean, many, many, many years ago,
Uh-huh.
when Hank Aaron was talking about how it was that basically the fast hands thing, where they would play with the ball, but it was like tar, and they set it on fire, and they would practice with this ball on fire to do quick release. That's how they learned to do quick release of the ball.
Yeah, yeah, that and
He and his brother. Yeah.
Pepper games, which Major League Baseball outlawed Pepper games because
No
that
pepper games.
yeah you go
You used
to
to
the
see
state,
that. You used to
yeah
see that on stadium. No
yeah
pepper games.
no
Mhm.
Pepper game,
I used to ask
so
myself, what the hell is that?
yeah, so yeah, with Hank Aaron's brother Tommy was good, but he I think Tommy played maybe 3 seasons with the Braves and that was it, you
Mhm.
know. So yeah, back then that's pretty much what you
Okay, this is a question that I have.
hmm
He played 3 seasons with the Braves, right?
right.
And then that was it, right?
hmm
Okay. Now, was he worse than any other player on the team, or he just wasn't Hank Aaron?
I think he was worse. Okay, he.
I don't know.
I don't think.
He wasn't
I
good.
don't. I don't think he hit over 250. See, if back in the day, maybe now, if you were a 250 hitter, you would just average, or
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's ridiculous now. You got players hitting 200 and
yeah,
under playing every
yeah,
day,
yeah,
but
yeah.
when
But see, that's because the game has changed.
the game is
Because
Mhm.
the game has
the
changed.
game has changed. I mean,
You
if
know, it's like the Boston Celtics, who I hate, this Boston and any of their teams. But their premise, they try to change the game, or the game would change them, or whatever. They shot a bunch of threes, a three
yeah,
point,
yeah,
and they lost.
yeah,
They
yeah,
Mhm.
lost.
and these days in baseball, if you're a starting pitcher, if you go 5 innings,
It's ridiculous.
okay,
Bob,
Nobody
Bob,
plays full games anymore. That's great,
you
no,
you
ridiculous.
try you try to take Bob Gibson out in the fifth inning, squeaky voice and all. If you were a manager, you came out to take him, you would leave empty-handed but alone.
yeah,
You're not taking Bob Gibson out in the fifth inning. He's not coming out.
no, you couldn't. I mean, back in the day with the Mets had a pitcher, Jim McAndrew. Jim McAndrew's nickname was Bambi. Okay, but he used to throw complete games.
Hmm.
Okay, he used to throw complete games. You don't see that in
No,
baseball anymore.
No,
I
you
mean,
don't.
my God, Wilbur Wood that pitched for the White Sox, he started both ends of a
yeah,
doubleheader.
throwing a knuckleball.
Yeah, yeah, throwing it up.
Yeah,
Oh, there you got it.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So the game has changed. Unfortunately, with us, and this goes back to something else I was telling people talking about a while back. Unfortunately, back then we had to excel. Okay, we had to excel at what we did, even though they had people sitting on the bench in the dugout that would just barely
Hmm.
getting by. I mean,
Right.
like with the Mets, who was it? Yogi Berra's nephew was George Theodore, who couldn't hit his way out of a paper bag,
Yep,
and
Hmm.
the
so
stork.
yeah, the stork. When he used to kill me, he come to bat, he only go like,
Yeah,
but but
nobody was putting him in a Primatine Mist commercial. Okay,
nah,
no, he
nah.
wasn't getting any commercial at all.
Maybe
But
he might. Maybe he might.
on the bench, and he got to say, "I am a Major League Baseball player."
But he was a joke. He was a joke.
Yeah, it's a
The
joke.
joke,
And if
you
he
know what
told
I say?
anybody,
Joke at me.
back then,
Joke at me. I will take that joke
well,
every
you
No,
know
day.
what?
and listen, there were a lot of black players back then. For every black player that could play, you had some that fizzled out.
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay,
they were jokes.
they
They
were
weren't good.
jokes.
You,
I
you
mean,
there was a guy called there was a guy that me and my brother used to make fun of all the time. He's black. He's a black ball player, played for the Yankees. Bobby Meacham.
that
He was horrible. It's like
was
everything that you could think of that could go wrong, this guy would do.
he was he was public enemy number one to George Steinbrenner. George
He was
Steinbrenner,
horrible.
he was horrible. Yeah,
He was
yeah.
horrible. And so the thing is, someone like George Theodore, the Stork. I mean, yeah, he's a ball player, but you know what?
In name only.
I mean, he would if he went around and and asked and told people who he was and what he did
They did
in New
nah,
York
nah,
in New
no.
York City, at least. I don't know about other places.
Mm.
He would be chased down the street with a torch.
Yeah.
But if
So
if you were a Puerto Rican ball player like Felix Millan, or if you were outside of New York like a Roberto Clemente, or
mhm,
or
Mhm.
someone like Tommy Agee, or someone, your money's no good here.
that's right.
Your money's no good here. You're not paying for anything. So the thing is that if it was a meritocracy. So if you are good, you will play. If you are bad, you will be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially back then with the Yankees, if Billy Martin was manager,
Yeesh.
okay, if he was manager, nah, if you wasn't pulling your weight, you would be gone. Especially Casey Stengel. Oh my goodness, it, those were hard ass managers back then.
But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing: was it racism for Billy Martin to pull Reggie Jackson out of the game in the middle, like let him take the field, and then pull him out of the field because he wasn't hustling, and
Well,
then
well,
let him
you
take that long walk?
well, you know what? With Billy Martin was I don't
An
want to use.
asshole.
He was there, so he was. I'm just trying to be nice. Say he was complex because Billy Martin was strange in that he had black players that he loved and black players that he could not stand. Reggie Jackson was one he could not stand. Believe it or not, Ricky Henderson, he loved Ricky Henderson. Why? Because they both came from the Oakland area. And they both were kind of like children of the streets, so to speak. So he loved Ricky Henderson for that. But with Elliot Maddox, he despised Elliot Maddox because one time he called Elliot Maddox a educated nigger.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the same thing with what's his name? What's the guy's name? Who plays center field for the Yankees? Bernie Williams.
Yeah.
Used to get bullied all the time by another black player, and Showalter, stood around and let it happen because Bernie Williams was considered more thoughtful in
Hmm.
his actions and the way he carried himself, and he let that bullying occur, and so it's a lot of times it's like it's hard to in certain places differentiate between what's racist and what's hazing and what's bullying and
Hmm.
what's this happened to me, so when I was a rookie, so I'm letting it happen to you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and see, with the thing about baseball is it's a reflection. Well, all sports teams in general are a reflection of society.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but like, before we get on, I want to say, and it may have to do with that. Like for instance, Bernie Williams. But you think this person, I can't who was you said had an issue with him? Is it because he's black and Hispanic, and they don't they got took issue with that?
It could have been. I don't know their personal
it
thing,
yeah,
but
it
I think
could have
it's the
been
way
that.
Bernie carried himself. I think it was a little different the way most players on that club carried themselves, and he was allowed to be bullied, and so
Yeah, it was a case. I mean, look at which was a really good book, Ball Four by Jim Bowden. You know, he used to catch hell because he wasn't like the other Yankee players back then. He was slightly counterculture. He used to
Hmm.
do a lot of reading. At that time when he was on the Yankees, he said it was you had a lot of rednecks on there.
Hmm.
Okay, because you heard more country music in their locker room clubhouse than anything. He said it took until Horace Clark to change up the music selections. You know.
Hmm.
and James, getting back to the 1947 and Jackie Robinson on the Dodgers, with the Dodgers and the Giants and Willie Mays on the Giants, when they left, the team of choice became the New York Mets because
Yeah.
a lot of people didn't want to become Yankee. A lot of black people from the South who came up north knew the Dodgers, and they couldn't go out to California to watch the game. So it was
Hmm.
really, New York at that point had only one baseball team, which were the Yankees. And when the Mets came to life, the Metropolitans came to life. A lot of black people from the South who had migrated and knew the Dodgers, they became Met fans.
Yeah, and it also helps that back then, by tradition, New York was a National League town. Okay, it
Mm-hmm.
was a National League town. Like you mentioned, how the American League is called the Junior Circuit, and the National League is called the Senior Circuit. And the American League didn't come into existence until like 1900, 1901. And again, you had a lot. See, one thing the Mets did that was cool was when they first came into existence, they brought in a certain amount of black baseball players.
Mm-hmm.
Bumsy Green and Choo Choo Coleman, Al Jackson. And then they really hit it off with black people in New York at that time because they had that brought in the mobile Alabama connection,
Yeah,
and that was
Cleon Jones and
the Tommy Agee.
Tommy Agee.
Yeah, you know. So the Yankees didn't. The Yankees were all, like I said, they were one of the last teams to integrate. Then they started picking up the pace in the early '70s.
and
You
and
know.
that's and that's where basically they had the teams are really bad. I mean, I was a Met fan because the Great Migration again and family
Mm-hmm.
wanted the Mets and everything. But I left the Mets when you remember, and I know you remember this, James, when M. Donald Grant and Dick Young, they decided to gut the team. They traded Tom Seaver and all these great ball players, and they just started to lose. That Dick Young, who was an enthusiastic racist,
Yeah.
started carrying water for the Mets. I was like, I'm done. I went to the Yankees. I was a Yankee fan ever since. And
Mm-hmm.
then
But
the Yankees got it had Oscar Gamble with that big afro and his hat
yeah,
on, and they had Chris Chambliss, and then they got Reggie Jackson, who I know was bold and brash, but from the hood we like bold and brash, and
yeah,
so and
had,
that brought in a lot of us.
yeah, it had Mickey Rivers,
Yeah,
who to this day people don't know what he means when he calls you a gozzlehead. I don't know.
and he always walked around like he was one of the fastest people in baseball, but always walked around like his feet hurt.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so when the Mets revealed a lot of racism happened in the Mets, and they became a really bad team. And Dick Young, who was just like who was celebrated at the time, but was one of the worst sports writers in New York City history, just so nasty and vile.
yeah.
And that was it. That was a turnoff for me, and I became a Yankee fan. I never looked back, and but I do look back because
Well,
the Mets hold a place because of my grandfather being a Met fan, and I look back as Penelope could tell you. We look back, when they
Mm-hmm.
won the World Series in the late '80s and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, and the Dale Strawberries and other
Oh
stuff.
yeah, we followed the Mets back then.
well, with me, I'm both. I'm both. Even though I'm kind of semi kind of boycotting the Yankees this year, but I'm both. And the reason why
Why
I'm
are we
both,
semi boycotting the Yankees this year?
He's still holding on to that Steinbrenner thing.
Yeah, but the thing is,
no, no, I still, I'm sorry. Project 2025 just leaves a bad taste in my mouth,
What I
and
got
it's
to do with the Yankees?
no, because they contributed money to it. Them, the Buffalo Bills, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and
Steinbrenner did or Cashman did?
no, this is Steinbrenner's team. Okay, so
okay.
like I just maybe I'll come back like Jim Bowden next year.
Ah,
But which I'm one thing I love when the Yankees brought him back for Old Timers Day. But no, the reason why I'm both is because Bronx River houses, the way it's situated in the Bronx, you can get to either Shea Stadium or Yankee Stadium within a nice brisk amount of time. You know, you go to Westchester, take no the back of the projects. We would catch the Q44 to West to Parkchester. No, not even that. We would just catch the Q44 and take it all the way out to Flushing and just walk across the bridge over that stinky stink Con Edison Creek or whatever it is. And with the Yankees, all we had to do is just catch the bus cross town or take the train down the 149th Street and come back up on the 4th. So I love both teams. And plus, I hate to date myself. My first Yankee game was 1968. Okay, the old Yankee Stadium.
I think they were bad then. I think at that.
They were.
Yeah.
That was the Tommy Fresh years. We had Rich McKinney, Jerry Kenny, Jake Gibbs, the catcher.
I don't even know those names.
Roy White, Horace Clark.
Roy White. Yeah, I know them.
Yeah, Mel Stottlemyre. Those were the bad years, you know.
Remember the? I had to get off topic again, but remember the wife swapping thing?
Yeah, that was around that time. Mike Kekich and Fritz Peterson.
Yeah.
What they were thinking, I thought.
I was a kid. When I was a kid, I heard that, and I said, "What the hell's going on?"
I
don't understand.
Yeah, just like, and see, here's the thing about the Mets. Joan Payson, when she was owner of the Mets, everything was great. When she passed away, and M. Donald Grant took over, that's when shit went south. Because see, both of them were on the board of directors for the Giants. Okay, and they were the only two members of the board of directors that voted against the Giants moving to San Francisco. Okay, but when M. Donald Grant, which ironically, actually, I bumped into him one day at Shea Stadium.
Did you choke him?
You know, people get on my case about that all the time. You know, because I just remember I'm trying to get into State Stadium and watch the game, and I bumped into this old guy with Bermuda shorts on, and like, "Excuse me, son," you know, and I said, "Gosh darn, that's M. Donald Grant and shit." And what I didn't like what he did was he embarrassed Cleon Jones one time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Cleon Jones got caught in spring training. He got caught in a van smoking weed with some white girl or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And M. Donald Grant made him come to a press conference up in New York in front of all these reporters and apologize.
And Dick Young loved that.
Oh yeah, he loved that. This will tell you Dick Young in a nutshell. Rusty Staub used to wear his sanitary hose up to the knee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dick Young didn't have a problem with that. When Dan Norman came in the Tom Seaver trade from the Reds and wore his sanitary hose the same way, he starts carrying on about, oh, look how he's wearing his stockings and all this. Come on, dude. What you know? Oh, because he's black and does that, now you got a problem?
Yeah, I had to get out of the Mets thing. Because not only because they became a almost racist organization, but they also had support in the media, you know, through certain sports writers. And I remember when Darryl Strawberry was, you know, just doing his thing. There was a second baseman. I forgot the guy's name.
Wally Backman.
Yeah. Where did they get this guy from? So he started criticizing Strawberry, saying Strawberry was lazy and didn't work hard. He wished that he had Strawberry's talents, because if he had Strawberry talent, he would be like blah blah blah. You know, and it's just pure, but it was just some cracker from someplace I had no idea.
So who are you? It's like, who are you?
Yeah,
that they have is talent. Because how about is the result of hard work? honing, your abilities.
Well,
Who are you to say he's not working hard?
see, here's the thing with that. Okay, because actually, Down Strawberry, when he heard, he said he was gonna bust that little redneck's ass and shit.
Hmm.
But while all that was going on, see, everybody's criticizing Down Strawberry's lifestyle is like good and all this. But while all that was going on, meanwhile, behind the scenes and down low,
Hmm.
Lenny Dykstra was running amok.
Yeah, I remember that.
He
In
was,
retrospect,
yeah, he was.
when they say all this stuff at the time, nobody's saying anything.
Hmm.
And
And I
that's when
still,
Dykstra went to Philly.
yeah, and I still think to this day, in his book, Keith Fernandez says that they were on the plane coming from Houston. They were celebrating, and he went to use the bathroom. He opened the door, and he said a certain Met was in there doing lines of coke.
Mm.
To this day, I think that was Lenny Dykstra.
You know that was Dykstra. That was Dykstra. That's why he got traded to Philadelphia.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and what gets me is they fucked up that whole team chemistry because they were trying to say that Kevin Mitchell was a bad influence
Hmm.
on Darryl Strawberry,
Who was
and
a
they
fantastic player, and who
yeah.
Penelope is the father for Donovan Mitchell, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Huh.
Mhm. Now, granted, Kevin Mitchell had his wild moments and whatnot, because you heard that story about him and Darryl Strawberry and the cat, right?
No,
What?
no, I didn't hear about the cat.
Okay, supposedly one time they was hanging out in Los Angeles and they were twisted and Kevin Mitchell got in an argument with his girlfriend and the next thing you know he grabbed the cat and decapitated the cat.
What?
Yeah. How
Is it
true that is,
real or just
how
rumor?
true that is, I don't know. But you know, but yeah, so they got rid of Kevin Mitchell and they brought in Kevin McReynolds, who was is vanilla and boring
Hmm.
Hmm.
as all get out. His thing was okay, I'm only gonna get 20 some RBIs and no 20 home runs and maybe 100 some RBIs and I'm done. I'm not don't ask me to do no more.
That's right. That's
Okay. And that's when things went south. That's to me one of the main reasons that that team went south, you know.
Mm.
yeah. So the thing is, in New York, you have a bunch of gentrifiers, right?
Right?
And people who are new, who are transplants and everything. And I get it. They want to see winning. They want to jump on the bandwagon of winning teams. But
Right.
they don't know the history of the teams. They haven't gone through the bad sour years that we've gone through being fans of these teams. And so they miss out on all that. So, you know, Penelope, do you think this is a good primer for them to listen to know some of the things about the teams and how the teams transformed and what they used to be?
Yeah, well, I think that all the background historical stuff about who used to be what and what they are now, I think that's great. But I mean, if it's like for a primer for like common modern baseball, I mean, I think you need like several episodes to discuss modern baseball. I mean, let's face right now, like you were talking earlier about the players and the rules and how people play, like people's batting averages, etc. Somebody batting 250 back in the day, and somebody when that was considered bad in terms of Tommy, Aaron. But then now you have people like Aaron Judge, batting over 400. I mean, how often does that happen?
The last 400 hitter was what's his
Ted
name from
Williams.
Ted Williams from the Hated
Yeah,
Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
And see here's the thing with New York and sports in general. Okay. And I tell this to all the new jacks that are coming in the city, the hipsters, the gentrification people, the turn up truck people, whatever. They gotta understand that if don't become a Yankee fan because of all of that winning. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
'cause there's gonna be a day or maybe 1 or 2 years when the Yankees take a dip. Okay, just ask
Mm-hmm.
me about the Yankees from the late '60s to the mid '70s
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the early '90s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, now if you're a Mets fan, don't be spoiled into thinking that this is gonna be with the Met how it is with the Mets forever. Okay, because the Mets
Mm-hmm.
will pull the Mets. Okay,
Yeah, they
the,
will.
the, the Mets
Oh
will
yeah.
pull the Mets. In fact, to me, a real none for none, a real New Yorker is probably a Mets fan. That's the
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
nitty.
wait a minute. What are you
No way,
trying to say?
man. We
No,
weren't
What are you
because
trying to
upset,
say?
you know.
yes, because no, I'm not saying you guys. I'm not saying you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with the Yankees, but you heard the saying about the Yankees,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what from back in their heyday. Rooting for the Yankees is like rooting for U.S. Steel.
I've heard that so many times.
It's
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
and, and,
it's
and you know what? A guy told me that he was from Detroit, and that was when the Detroit Tigers were like winning.
hmm
You know, like
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Gibson winning kind of things. He said, "Who do you root for?" I said, "I root for the Yankees." He said, "Rooting for the Yankees, man. That's like you rooting for U.S. Steel. Like it's a
yeah
given." But
yeah
see,
Yeah, but they don't
you
win
don't
all the
know
time.
they
all the hardship that they went through in the '80s. You know, in the early '80s, but they were a piece of garbage.
yeah. I,
You
I
know,
I tell people ask me, okay, well, all right, you like the Yankees, yeah. Well, what's your favorite player? I say all time player. They say yeah. They figure I'm gonna say Aaron Judge or
yeah,
Reggie
yeah,
Jackson. So no, my favorite all time Yankee is Roy White.
yeah. He's Roy Wright was he was a
My
standard.
yeah,
Yeah,
my favorite Yankee is Roy White. Now when it comes to the Mets, I tell any new Met fan, I hope y'all in it for the duration. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
a real Met fan is like me, sitting up in my parents' apartment in the late '70s, watching the Mets being beat by the St. Louis Cardinals 8-0. Mookie Wilson is at bat, and I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
he gets a base hit to
yeah,
start
yeah.
rally something
You know what it
Mm-hmm.
is? It's like I'm watching my team, and they're getting beaten by fill in the blank.
like
Yeah. Yeah,
there
there
you
you
go.
Fill in
go.
the blank.
Yeah,
But it translates to the I just finished watching the New York Knicks beat the Boston Celtics, and people say, "Oh, they're not going to go to the championship." Then I go, "Listen, be quiet. They've already
Mm-hmm.
won the championship for me. They
yeah.
beat the Boston Celtics. That's all I needed. I don't need much. I don't need much else."
That's
Yep.
that's my thing for for all my sports things. When it comes to the Knicks, I'm like, okay, I don't think they're gonna do too good this year, but as long as they beat Boston,
I'm good. I'm one.
I'm good.
I'm
I'm
one. I
good.
don't. They don't have to win another game for me. Because otherwise, I'm watching them, and I'm watching the Mets, I'm watching the Yankees, and I'm watching the Knicks, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah,
I'm waiting
yeah.
for something bad to happen.
Yep.
And so when the Mets in the '86 World Series, the Bill Buckner
hmm
game,
Mm-hmm.
that was unbelievable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let me tell you, I couldn't even. I was so nervous. Didn't watch the game. I went to bed, then I woke up the next day, and it was Sunday, and it was this week with David Brinkley. I never forget. And I'm kind of in a melancholy mood, and I'm watching him talk to Pat Goodell. Pat Goodell was he was like a head honcho in the Democratic National Committee, and he was from Boston. So they talking, And David Brinkley asked me, he said, well, what do you think about such and such and such and such? And he gave his answer. He said, but you can't go by me because I predicted that the Red Sox were going to win last night. And I was like, oh, shit.
Wait a minute. Wait. You missed that game?
Yes, I did.
Oh, my God.
Goodness.
No, listen, when it gets like that.
You can't. You're like, sometimes I'm like that too. I can't.
Plus, sometimes I have this weird thing that I think.
That I'm watching it and I'm jinxing them by watching.
Yeah.
I do that too.
You missed that game.
Agreed. I do the same thing.
I mean, me and Penelope watched that game. They were doing the produced by and the credits.
Oh yeah. Oh my Lord. Yeah.
By
don't say. Stop announcing who produced it. Be quiet.
Nah, I couldn't. I could not. I just couldn't.
It was a point. I tell you, James. It's at several points of ecstasy. Absolute ecstasy.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, there's so many sports, New York sports, Boston related. If you don't remember that game or know that game, then you can't be. No, you can't. I can't say you can't be, because we welcome all newcomers to the city, right? People,
right.
And new and people that became Met fans, but if they're bandwagon jumper honors or something, if you got to know that game, you got to know the Bill Buckner game. You got to, if you're a Yankee fan, you got to know the what is that? The Aaron Boone home run game. You got to know that game.
Oh well. See, now that's one game I did watch was it 78 with Bucky Denton, that home run.
Oh, you got to know that game. You got to know the Chris Chambliss home run game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now those games I watched, okay, but even then, it's like, oh God, I gotta reach for the Pepto Bismol.
If you're a Knicks fan, you got to know the John Starks the dunk game.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember, what was the center we had? Smith.
Yeah.
Charles Smith.
What's his name? What's his name? Penelope.
Who? Charles Smith.
Charles Smith. Yeah. You got to know the pain.
For that shot, they kept fouling him. They would not call that foul. He was fouled to death. They would not call that foul.
You got to know the pain with it. In 2004, where the Yankees were up on the Red Sox 3-0.
Oh Lord, I don't want to talk.
You got to know that
pain. Yeah, I do.
You got to know the pain. You got to know the pain. The pain I felt when I was still a Met fan.
Okay, no.
And they lost the World Series to the Oakland A's. You got to know that pain.
They tell you, I know the pain. I can remember standing in the back of my building, wearing my Mets jacket, warm-up jacket, crying because they lost. Was it Game 7 to the Oakland A's?
To the Oakland A's.
And I
Tom Seaver on the mound.
Yeah, I boo-hooed in the back of the building. People were like, what's wrong, yo?
And remember that year they were fighting? They were in the NL playoffs. And they were up against the Big Red Machine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Big Red Machine.
Yeah, so it's
you talk about this, but this is a conversation that we kind of had, a week or so ago. We started talking about this, how we get caught up in these fans, fanaticism. That's what being a fan is, being a fanatic, the fanaticism for our teams, and whether or not that was something that was a good thing. And we think about it, because we had a discussion. We say, and from my perspective, I think it is a very good thing, because the type of loss you feel when your team loses is an attenuated loss. If you had to feel that in real life with regard to something or someone that was actually close to you, it could break you. So this is a way that we deal with, being able to feel that type of grief without, affecting us to, the level of something that happens to someone that's very close to us. and God forbid something that does happen to you, that's which is something that's very close to you, you have experienced a type of grief that is a conduit for you getting through it. You
I've been
know,
yeah, I've been asking Penelope, and how is it? Why is it that we feel this way about these teams?
yeah, and I think it's because of that. It's that we don't live in the dangerous world of the man in nature, but we still have these feelings, tribal, feelings, conquest, etc. And they aren't, just they just don't just go in nowhere. So this thing to be able to participate, not as a team member, but in the team sport in this way, I think is part of that. I think it's a psychological thing that is part of our being and our makeup. And if we don't do it, I think it's kind of like that situation when they all, they don't say it straight out. But when you ask somebody, say, "What, you don't play sports?" You don't follow sports, because in your mind, it's like, well, why are you not doing this? Because it is this communal activity that, in all honesty, really does not demand that much of you, except to learn the rules, watch it, invest a little bit of yourself in it. And I think if you can't do something like that, then there are a lot of things you wonder psychologically, emotionally, how can you do those things if you don't learn how to invest
Right. What's
in.
what's your what's your release valve? What do you use as a release?
Well,
From all these pent up emotions and
If you don't do
everything.
that, if you don't follow team sports, and
Yeah.
the other thing about team sports is this: you may do something that is a solo activity where you say, I'm doing this and I release my tensions, whatever. But again, this is about the communal thing, to be able to stop at the water coolers. Did you see that game? Or, are you looking forward, to that game that's coming up? And it's like you take all of everybody's frustration and you can disperse it over a large amount of people, rendering it inert instead of something like a sharp, knife or something
Right.
that'll stab you.
well, I think with with me, when it comes to the Mets and the Yankees, it's not just tribal. To me, is kind of gone beyond that. It's just part of the flow of life, so to speak.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, because I can remember going to Shea Stadium, and I love this. Coming in there, you smell the beer, you smell the peanuts, you smell the hot dogs. I remember one time saying if they can make that, combine all of that into a cologne, I'd buy it. I remember the thrill of being on the field at Shea Stadium, but not for a Mets game. Okay, my mother dragged me to a Billy Graham revival,
Oh, your lord.
Your mother didn't
and
like you too much, did she?
yeah, she dragged me to it. Went, Billy Graham did his thing. Then he was telling people come on the field, and actually, I had met Ethel Waters. Okay, because she was singing gospel for him,
Wow.
and it was a hot day, and she was actually sitting under the stage keeping warm. I mean, started keeping cool.
Right.
You know, and the funny part about it is, I met a kid from my projects, Peter, and instead of focusing on Billy Graham, we was making out like we were Cleon Jones or Buddy Harrison. So it's that bond. And then with the Yankees, years later in the '80s, when I was marching with the Westchester Brassmen, we had got uh, um hired to play before the um before the game started. So we get there, our bus gets there, we go into, pulls into the near the bullpen, and security guard, he comes out and he says, "Oh, who y'all?" He said, "Oh, well, we Westchester Brassmen." He said, "Oh, no, I ain't here." He said, "Oh, you'll probably be thrown out after the fifth inning." He's like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, y'all gonna be thrown out." He said, "Y'all know the Connecticut Hurricanes? Yeah, thrown out. New York Skyliners? Yeah, thrown out. Onto Caballeros? Yeah, thrown out." So then we get the word from high above Steinbrenner's people or Steinbrenner himself that we had exactly 11 minutes to get on the field, do our show, and get off. Right? Okay. We march on the field, and that's when I noticed how teams like to play little tricks with the field because the Yankees had this thing where the grass around the pitcher's mound was thicker
Right.
than the outfield because that way, if somebody lays down a bunt, the ball slows up. If not,
Right.
it not just stops dead. So we do our show. We go up, go in the bleachers. You know, we could sit. So I go get a beer with a friend of mine. Next thing I know, just as I'm about to get my beer, one of our members comes. He said, "Come on." He's like, "Yo, Jerry." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come on, we out." I said, "We out. We getting thrown out." I will jump in Jehoshaphat. What the hell? Sure enough, two of our snare drummers decided they wanted to sit in the blacked out part of the outfield seats.
The
You know, the
batter's
black,
eye.
the
The
yeah,
batter's
the
eye.
batter's
Yeah.
eye. Right. They wanted to sit
Why?
there.
Why? Why they want to sit there?
I and mind you, come on. You should know not to sit in that fucking part of the stadium. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
And
And
why
sure
don't
enough,
and why don't you sit and why don't you sit there?
you know,
It's the batter's eye. It's black and nobody's allowed
Yeah.
there.
yeah,
So that's just something why they don't sit there.
Yeah.
yeah.
No one sits there.
No one sits there. That area right in center field
Hmm.
is blacked out. I think City Field doesn't even have seats there.
Mm.
And it's black. That way, when the ball is released from the pitcher's hand,
You could pick it up.
you can pick it up better.
Okay.
It's the same reason why some players put blackout under their eyes because that those two things combine to bring the glare down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can you imagine
'cause
having an entire outfield out there that white?
you
I couldn't pick it. I couldn't see shit. I might get
you
hit by a
and,
ball.
you would end up in the hospital because you
Yeah.
couldn't see the ball coming.
Yeah.
I couldn't see nothing.
Yeah. And that's the one thing, that's the crazy thing about baseball. I think I could be wrong, but I think only maybe one or two batters have actually died from getting hit in the head by a pitch.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've never got hit in the head by a pitch. I never hit anybody in the head with a pitch, even accidentally or whatever. But I got hit in the ass. I got hit in the shoulder. I got hit everywhere else. But I never got hit. I never got hit in the head because I could always bend over like doing limbo before I could get hit in the head or face.
Mhm.
Like
And
doing
see,
limbo.
you get somebody like either Don Baylor or Ron Hunt. That's how they used to
Oh
make
my
their
God!
money.
Yeah.
You know, that's how they used to
That ball hurts.
Yeah, well, look at that time. The Pirates and the Reds got into a a brushback war,
Mhm.
and I think somebody on the Reds hit one of the Pirate players, and Doc Ellis, he saw he was pitching, and he said, "Listen," he sent word to the Reds dugout. He said, "Listen, you tell Pete Rose when he comes out to come to bat." He said, "Tell him I'm gonna hit him in his ass."
Wow.
Which I can understand. I mean, hitting somebody in the head is
Yeah.
head hunting is.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
I remember. You remember when Juan Marichal got hit, and he came out to the mound. He had a bat.
Oh,
wow.
what that was Tito Fuentes and Juan Marichal,
Mhm.
and it wasn't so much that they got hit, but Johnny Roseboro, the catcher for the Dodgers, every time he would catch the ball, he throw the ball back to the pitcher, but close to Juan Marichal's head.
Hmm.
So finally, Juan Marichal had enough, and they started scuffling. I think he hit him. Yeah, he busted him upside the head with the bat, and then Tito Fuentes
Wow.
came out and they was both trying to bat Johnny Roseborough into next week.
Oh.
And I think Sandy Koufax had to jump in between them, and the benches cleared. But they actually, I think either ESPN or maybe even Major League Baseball's network, they had them come to the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and they buried the hatchet and whatnot.
It's the hot-blooded Latins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Hot-blooded
see,
Latins. Yep.
that's the thing about baseball. Baseball will have the funniest team fights. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and you needed a badass catcher, to protect your pitchers. Like, okay, so you got hit by a pitch, and you try to make your way out to the mound. You got a badass catcher.
Yeah.
You're not getting to that mound.
Yeah,
You
you're
ain't
not
going
going
nowhere
there.
near that mound.
Yeah, and I mean, there was some really epic battles back in the '70s with the Red Sox and the Yankees.
Oh yeah, and during the '90s too. Remember with Pedro Martinez?
Yeah.
Wow.
Did a head throw of Don Zimmer?
Yeah, yeah. I remember that.
And remember that punk bitch catcher for the Red Sox was trying to fight A-Rod, and he had all his equipment on. Yeah, you're gonna.
Oh
yeah, a white boy. You're gonna fight him with your chest protector, your mask.
Yeah.
Okay, man.
And mind you, with Zimmer, it was a warning that if you got in a fight with Don Zimmer, you had to be careful because he squirts tobacco juice. Like an octopus squirts ink.
Something else. Don Zimmer had a plate in his hand.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I know that.
Yeah, that's another one that got hit in the head with a pitch. Yeah, he had a plate in his head.
Ruined his career.
Wow.
I remember a hilarious fight at Shea Stadium with Mike Jorgensen, and I think I can't remember who the pitcher was for the Expos, but he threw a pitch at Mike Jorgensen, and Mike Jorgensen, he started to jog towards first base. Then he did a quick cut and tackled it. And the thing about it, both benches empty, but this huge Hispanic Latino man got out his seat down the first baseline, and homeboy was, I don't know how many beers he had, but he was coming down the first baseline to jump in, and security had to tackle him.
Oh my God!
Oh Lord!
You remember the fight? I know we're getting along, producer, but
we're getting along. But again, your lesser known tales of baseball. So
you remember the fight? You talk about the Big Red Machine, the fight between Pete Rose and Bud Harrelson at second base. With little ass skinny Bud Harrelson, who weighed maybe soaking wet 120 pounds, against solidly built Pete Rose, who was just like a muscle with arms and legs.
And mind you, it was building up towards that because they didn't like certain comments that Buddy Harrelson had made about the Reds. But see, you gotta understand, Buddy Harrelson had a mouth on him. That's why him and Ed Kranepool never really clicked, because Buddy Harrelson used to talk too much. But before the game started in batting practice, they had to separate Buddy Harrelson and Joe Morgan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they had to separate them because Joe Morgan stepped up to him and grabbed him by the shirt.
What?
Because he said something cocky that the Reds didn't like, and the Reds felt that the Mets was some punk pootie pop team.
They only won, like, I think they won like 80 like 82 games or something. Like
Yeah,
it wasn't a great team. It wasn't a great team record wise, but
it wasn't.
emotionally, I mean, every part of New York was behind that team. It was
Yeah, that was you gotta believe. And mind you, when Tug McGraw, because what it was they were in the dumps, and M. Donald Grant called himself coming into the clubhouse before a game to make a pep talk. Okay, and a lot of them didn't like that. You know, a lot of Mets players didn't care for M. Donald Grant. You know, go figure.
Mhm.
So he was making this pep talk, this speech, and all of a sudden Tug McGraw jumped up and said, "You got to believe." And actually, he
Mhm.
was being sarcastic. You know, he
and
was being,
then it became a meme.
yeah,
Yeah, he's
yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and that, like I said, that was the year I cried because that team. I was like, wow. And plus the fact,
Willie Mays
yeah,
was on that team.
that's
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why I cried because back then and even to this day, I personally think that Willie Mays is the greatest player to ever play baseball.
Well,
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe Ken Griffey Jr.
mm,
Maybe there's,
and
but no,
I
I
figured
just,
that for me myself, and looking back
uh-huh.
at certain people, Bo Jackson, I wish had a longer career.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, just that 1989. Was it the 1989 All Star game where he ran sideways
Yeah,
along
at
the
the
wall?
wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
But
my God!
you
It's
know,
like this man is not
he was
real.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you know, in order to be a baseball god, you have to do it every year, sustainable every
Hmm.
year. You know, and so people like Mays, people like Mantle, people like Ken Griffey,
Aaron.
those- Aaron, every single year, you know what you're going to get, and at the
Yeah,
and they're starting to slow down when they go underneath. Their numbers go underneath what they
Hmm.
typically get, and so Willie Mays was playing center field for the New York Mets. I
yeah,
wasn't born. I wasn't alive when Mays
Hmm.
in his prime, and so seeing him play for the Mets was fantastic.
yeah.
It's like
What?
it's like it's like you used to be in New York. Willie Mays used to play stickball in the streets of New York, and then of course the Giants moved, and now he's back in New York.
Hmm.
Well, I think that that's part of the reason why I'm so much into New York baseball nostalgia because of the fact that he came back and I mean, people loved him here in New York, especially Joan Patience. She was the one that made the maneuvering to get him back. Even though by 1972, 73, he was basically running on gas fuel.
He was washed. He was
Yeah,
washed.
he
Yeah.
was washed. In fact, there were times when before a game during that year, Yogi Berra would go to him and say, "Willie, can you play today?" And he would say, depending on how he felt, he said, "Yeah," or he said, "No." You know.
But
Uh
the thing is, but the issue is to me that
huh.
a lot of New York teams that you give that much of yourself, your playing years, your devotion, that the very least they should do is let you end your career in a New York team.
New York sports fans are
You know,
devoted. They're devoted
yeah.
fans, and so you
Yeah.
see somebody. You saw it in this playoff when Mitchell Robinson had shot some people saying some of the worst free throws they've ever
Hmm.
seen a professional ball player shoot. But do you think that the New York Knicks fans care?
No.
No, don't.
They don't give a
Don't.
damn. They don't care.
They don't. And see, this is what some people don't. Some players don't understand. Joe Namath, Mark Messier,
Hmm.
uh, Phil Sims, um, Reggie Jackson, Tom Seaver, when he was alive. Those players, when they came to New York, Frazier,
Hmm.
their money is no good.
You know, no money. Your
Hmm.
money's no good here.
Yeah.
Even the players that didn't win, like
Yeah.
the John Starks, you know
Pat
the
Ewing's, you know.
yeah,
Mhm.
your money's not, and if you did win, your money is definitely no good.
Yeah.
You ain't paying for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, look at Stephon Marbury. When he was playing, he was getting on people's nerves.
Yeah, but
You know what I'm saying?
now you
But
pay for nothing. It's like what's his name? What's the other guy's name? Anybody who was on the Yankee championship team. Okay,
Yeah.
you know Patrick Ewing. Not you don't pay for anything.
yeah,
You're
and,
good. You're good, Pat. You're good. Go ahead.
yeah, and once with certain players, when you come back, it's all good because it was an estrangement between the Yankees and Jim Bowden for decades.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You couldn't mention his name in Yankee Stadium. But the day they had the old timers day, and he came jogging out in the field in his Yankee
Mhm.
uniform,
Yeah.
it's it's crazy. And I'm quite sure, yeah, Chicago, Boston,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, I sure they got. I don't know nothing about those cities. I mean, they may got good stuff. I don't know, but I know that as a New York sports fan, it goes beyond. I mean, you don't have to win a championship or a ring or any of that.
Right.
It's like
To be respected by the New York fans.
yeah,
yeah,
because you gave it your all.
That's
yeah.
all I expect.
You did the best you could. You
And
did
They
let
the
me
go
best
tell
to
you
you,
work
could.
every day, just like
Yeah,
they have to. The people who pay for that ticket have to go to work every day, and
you
that's
and
did the
all
and,
they
best. You did the
that you got
best
to
you
go to
could.
work every
mhm.
day.
Yeah.
And you know that I tell you, the craziest thing I ever saw was back in the day, Yankee Stadium. It would even be at a certain after a certain inning, Reggie Jackson would come out, go to right field. The next thing you know, people are throwing money at him.
Quarters.
Quarters, um, quarters crumpled up in bills.
Reggie Barr.
Wow.
Okay, and it would get to the point where people would throw him so much money that one of the I guess one of the clubhouse attendants or one of the groundskeepers would come out and Reggie, listen, Reggie knew what time it was. Reggie would put all this in his glove. Okay, he put all this in, all that loose change and bills in his glove,
Hmm.
and the attendant would come out and he have a bag and he put the money in a bag and go at. Now that to me, that shows you crazy respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't
Okay,
pay you enough. Let me pay you some.
you know,
Well, you know what? You know what team we didn't mention? I know it's a
Who?
baseball show, but
Yes.
nobody mentioned the Brooklyn Nets.
well,
Again, Brooklyn.
Yeah. Well, that's again. It's a baseball show,
yeah,
not a
Well, I know,
basketball
but
show, man.
we went outside. We started talking about basketball and some other
Yeah,
stuff.
but that's another issue, and I mean that's a big issue. The Brooklyn Nets, that's not a
You
small
want to have want to
thing
have
to
the
discuss.
basketball show?
Yeah, because you're gonna have to. I mean, I think you gotta because lot to unpack with what has happened in New York basketball.
yeah. I mean, it was chaos down at Madison Square Garden over there. I mean, the intersections were blocked.
Mm.
I mean, I would say it was like a couple of thousand people, and not just the people that went to see the I guess the free.
Mm-hmm.
No, it wasn't. They were still
On Seventh Avenue, right? You mean you
right.
talking about the people? Yeah,
Yeah, it was just craziness. And what I like about it is that this is a new generation of Knicks fans.
yeah.
This
It's a
is
new
this.
generation.
Yeah,
People who didn't see the '90s, the Knicks or anything, so they haven't been to the Eastern Conference Final 25 years. I know. I saw people crying.
Wow.
Yeah, people crying because
Wow.
yeah. And this is the thing, Penelope. That's the question I asked you. Why do people cry? Cry. I mean, it's not them. If people criticize a thing that you like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they say bad, horrible things like your team is garbage and your team doesn't play well, and Why waste your time? And then your team is a joke in a movie, in movies and stuff, and then you care so much about it to the point where a good thing happened and you're so excited about it that you cry. I'm not sure I understand that. I know you said it, but I'm not sure.
I,
Um,
I, well, I can understand it. Again, like I said, it's these teams are a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from the first time I saw it with the Mets, I remember my brother came in with a Tops collection cards. He was
Mm-hmm.
making up a collection, and just not only the fact that orange, blue, and dark blue, like the Yankees, is my favorite colors,
Mm-hmm.
but back then, wow, I was like, oh wow, they have two, not one but two players on the teams with my first name, Jerry.
Okay, there we
Okay,
go.
Jerry Grody, Jerry Kuzman, and then oh wow, Jerry Kuzman is left-handed like me.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you get that bond. Now, meanwhile, with football coming up in during that time in the '60s, it was like you had the old school, like my older brother and all the older guys in the neighborhood. They were NFL,
Mm.
and the NFL was crew cuts, high top football shoes, garden country. But then the AFL was like
Mm.
razzle dazzle, white
Mm-hmm.
shoes, bright colors. You know, they threw a lot. So I became a AFL fan. Kansas City and the Jets. Now,
Yeah.
little did I know that I would spend about 54 years in NFL prison. For
Purgatory.
being, yeah,
Purgatory.
first sorry for being a Kansas City Chief fan,
Huh.
but none for nothing when they came back and they won the first Super Bowl they did in a while recently. Oh yeah, I cried.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
It's
cried,
a
and you
long
know
way.
what? And you know what? It was a continuation of me crying back in 1971 when the Miami Dolphins beat us in that triple overtime.
Mm-mm-mm.
I cried back then. So this is
Yeah. 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 People get emotional, but again, like I
yeah,
said, I think it's a good thing because we live in a time in a world where there's not too much that we get emotional about.
yeah,
That we're told that we're supposed to just suck it up and not have feelings, but it's a way that we have been able to express feelings, joy, pain, anger, whatever, in a way that, we aren't, picking up bats and, killing anyone or killing ourselves,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. That's
it's
the thing.
controlled, right?
That,
Controlled.
that that's the thing. And I'm watching the news in the background, and we can talk off the podcast. But watching this news reminds me of why I don't watch the news.
Hmm.
there you go.
It's like
There you go.
a continuum of horror stories.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But the thing is that's so awful is that I think after a while, they keep doing it, people become desensitized. There'll be
Yeah,
no more clicking. Nobody will do it because no one will care,
no one will care.
because they
Yeah,
just become desensitized to it.
I mean, it's horrible stuff.
Yep.
You know,
But people will become desensitized. I mean, how many days can you say, oh my gosh, the sky's falling and people's hair is on fire? And
yeah,
eventually people just be standing there with their buckets of water, and their umbrella prop up the sky. How many times you're going to be able to say those things and have people actually, care about it. It'll be white noise, and
yeah,
they'll move
it's
on.
a bunch of white noise, and I think that they say these horrible things in order to just get people's goats or get people fearful. They're talking about this Brooklyn Bridge, the ship that ran into the brook, and then they show, it showed the cars on the Brooklyn Bridge. The cars on the Brooklyn Bridge.
yeah,
They just keep going. It's just not a thing. But
Yeah, yeah.
the news shows the ship that ran into the bridge in D.C. Now the Brooklyn
Mhm.
Bridge and that bridge in D.C. are totally two separate structures.
Right.
Nothing is going to bring the Brooklyn Bridge down.
Yeah. But you know
like
what's
that
you know,
plane-
but
it's like that
Otto,
plane-
Otto,
but
Otto, they can hope. They can only hope, right?
It's like that plane that hit the Empire State Building.
Uh-huh.
You know what the Empire State Building said? And
And you want to hear something funny about my shop teacher, Mr. Myerson? He was a fireman for that when that plane hit the Empire State Building.
oh really?
Yeah, because he used to bring in pictures that they took of the floors that the plane actually, managed to impact. But yeah,
And,
yeah,
and to my knowledge, Empire State Building's still there.
yeah, same thing with the Brooklyn Bridge. I saw the
Still
videos. And I saw the videos. I said, you know what? That ship is gonna lose.
Yeah, it's gonna lose.
Yeah.
They understand when they built those things, they weren't fucking around.
Yeah.
They built the shit
And
out
then,
of them.
and like you say, the people who drive over, like, oh man, look at that. A
Yeah,
boat.
they built the
And
shit.
can go on to work.
They built the shit out of it. And you're talking about the World Trade Center built in the 70s. It's like the mob from Jersey built that shit. Put a whole lot of asbestos and other shit in there and some string.
It's really funny.
The Empire State Building, those buildings like that, they built that shit out of them. And
yeah.
And so
when it had meaning for people to go there, their workmanship, craftsmanship meant something to them.
Yeah, you show pictures. They got black people working on them. The white people, they got native indigenous people. They built the shit out of it.
Yeah. So I don't. When I said, when I saw that, I said, this ship is gonna lose.
That shit is lost. Lost.
Yeah.
I mean,
but again, like I said, when they came toward that thing and it hit and the cameras were, it's like, oh, they thought it was gonna break. We could only hope. They thought it would be like,
Oh yeah.
They thought maybe traffic would stop, or people would
they thought that it would break and they'd have, was it the horror?
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to be able to catch that moment, and it didn't happen.
No. Yeah, and they would have, if it was CNN, they would get somebody to make up some quick theme music for it.
Yeah.
They'll show it over and over. And so the next thing is the former President Biden has cancer. So you'll hear that over the next few weeks or months or whatever. A lot of people being kind, but many people being nasty.
Of course.
So that's why we went to sports. I think that baseball. I think Penelope, James. I think you're absolutely right. It becomes part of our life in a way that's different than how we interact with life in general.
Yeah.
If people want us to. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I find that this year I've gotten more into the Mets than anything else, because it's almost like comfort food also. I watch I listen to the game at work. I watch the highlights when I get home. I'm having a love affair listening to old Mets broadcast on YouTube.
Yeah.
Remember back in the day?
Yeah.
We used to listen on the radio.
Yes.
To the Mets game. And also, the thing is that a lot of Mets games, Yankees were channel 11, right? And the Mets were channel 9. And I don't know how kids, we were growing up, the games are almost always on television.
Yeah.
And I don't know how kids today, if you don't have any money, how do you become a fan? How do you watch the games?
Well, as far as going to the stadium, you better take out a loan. Okay, you better take out a loan. A couple years ago, a friend of mine, she came up from Philly, from Philly, and I said, okay, I would take you to Yankee Stadium. And it was just so nice of a highway robbery. I had such a good time having my pockets turned inside out and whatnot. I would even have accepted a nice pistol whipping
Hey,
because
hey, hey, James, you remember back in the day, if you wanted to see a Met game or particularly a Yankee game, all you really needed was a pair of scissors and an empty milk carton.
Mhm.
yeah,
You'll
yeah,
cut out the the coupon on the back of a
Mhm.
milk carton, and
yep.
that was your ticket to Yankee
That
Stadium.
was your ticket. You had to cut it out and whatnot, and you got yourself a free ticket. Shea Stadium, you could actually bring beer in there, but you had to put it in a freezer. Okay, they give
Mhm.
you a Dixie cup or whatever, and you go to your seat, and when you want your beer, you could come down and go in the freezer and get your beer. Yankee tickets were lovely because the upper deck. Oh man, you could live like a king because Yankee tickets were cheap.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if do they still have people who I don't hear this on television anymore when I watch the games.
Mm.
Remember the people used to go through the game saying, "Hot dog, get your hot dog." Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they
They
still have that?
they've cut down on that. Okay, they will have vendors go through the stadium. First of all, it's no more Harry M. Stevens. That was the 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 guy that had the monopoly on vending in both Yankee and Shea stadiums, and that's because he was basically the person that invented vending hot dogs and all that at the polo grounds. Um, if you go into Yankee and Shea Stadium and you go to the concession stand and get a beer or a hot dog, and you pull out your money, they'll tell you your money's no good here.
Mhm.
Why? Because you got to go to you got to go to the I guess reverse ATM machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you gotta put money on a card,
Oh my
on a
Mhm.
God.
debit card. Yeah, you gotta put money on a debit card like this. This one I had got from when I went to the Mets pop up store on 14th Street. But yeah, there's no more cash in either stadium.
Well,
No more.
okay. So how would kids like us who's growing up today, how would they watch a game? Is it possible to watch a game on TV? How would they access watching a Met or Yankee game?
Okay, if if you're a Mets fan and you want to watch on broadcast over the air TV, you would have to wait until channel 11 puts a Mets game on.
And
Mhm.
Okay,
how often does that happen?
they will start off with a game maybe for the first couple of months on a Sunday. Okay, you could also watch a Mets game on on Fox, because Fox has, I guess, the contract to the game of the week on Saturdays.
Okay,
But
so
these,
like you can only
but
watch like what, like several times a month or a couple of times a month?
yeah, yeah, a couple of
Wow.
times a month with the New York Yankees, you are shit out of luck because
Oh my
they do
Huh.
God.
not, they do not come on over the air broadcast TV unless it's Fox Network game of the week.
Wow.
That is
No more, no more, no more local. No
How
more.
do they
No,
expect? Then how do they expect to develop a fan base?
they don't want you. They don't want you as a fan base.
they,
If you don't have no money, they don't want you.
they touche. There it is.
Mhm.
They they're only concerned. Okay, let me.
They
Here's
ought to be
the
ashamed of themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
and here's why. Do you guys ever notice why with these current baseball stadiums that the capacity is only maybe 45 or 47 people if it's
Yeah,
sold out?
It used to be 50, right?
Right. Some
Yeah.
play it's shit. Yankee Stadium used to be 57.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which I thought
Okay.
was, I didn't think that was a big number until I went other places and other people think that's a big number. I didn't
Right.
think that was a big number. Yeah.
Yankees would be 57, the Mets maybe 55 at Shea. They Major League Baseball has concluded that they would rather have one person spend $100 than what 10 people spend $10.
Wow.
That's what they look at. As far as cultivating a younger audience,
uh-huh.
it's not really Major League Baseball really doesn't. I hate to say, it, but they really don't care. If you
Well,
notice,
what do they expect to happen? Well, I mean, 10 years from now, 5 years from now.
they're hoping that people will just keep spending, spending, spending. That's what they hope.
But isn't it like a recipe for your fans aging out and dying? I mean, you have football, right?
Right,
And
Mhm.
football is on every week. You get to see your team every week, and
right,
then you get to see other people's teams in
right.
other cities on Sundays and
Hmm.
on Thursdays, and almost when the football season is up and running, it's hard not to see a football game on, right?
I know, I know, I
But
know.
in baseball, you say, where's baseball? You
Mhm.
can't find it.
No, because again, their business plan is they just want a certain amount of people that will spend top dollar. Okay,
Isn't that a death sentence for the
if
baseball?
at the rate they're going, yes, because that's why the Athletics are currently playing in Sacramento, okay, in a minor league stadium. That why the Pirates are not drawing anybody to the point where you go to YouTube, you see a Pittsburgh Pirate usher at their stadium whipping a man with a belt.
It's
What?
insane.
But
And
and the
and
week
and
before,
the Oakland A's, they play in the picnic grounds. It looked
yeah,
like.
yeah.
Yeah, but it looks
So,
very pretty.
Yeah, but it's
oh
the
Lord, it looks
game the
very
game that we
pretty.
love, the game that we love, the game that we love and we grew up loving is gonna die because it's not on television and not
It's
on regular.
yeah, it's to me, it's a business plan that's not sustainable. Okay, because when you and I grew up, okay, it's shit. I have ticket stubs from Shea Stadium, believe it or not, where the price is $1.75.
Yeah.
Okay, $1.75. Yankee Stadium, I think I used to pay $2.50 for the upper deck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you notice, even the time that games are put on, especially during the playoffs and the World Series, it's not good for kids that have to get up and
Yeah,
go to school.
I can imagine.
I'm quite
I
sure
mean,
in Brooklyn there was a time when during that you went to school and somebody snuck a transistor radio
well, look
somewhere
at
in
the remember we talked about the Mets playing the Oakland A's, right?
right.
Mhm.
The only time that we may have missed a game during the World
Mhm.
Series was when it came on while we were in school, or shortly before we were in school.
Mhm.
Right.
It never stayed on long enough. It wasn't late enough, even when they were playing the Oakland, that it went past like 11 o'clock or something like that.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so now, basically, they don't give a damn. I don't know what their game plan is.
Now, their game fan is they found a demographic that's willing to spend a certain amount of money at a game. If you go to Yankee Stadium, if you go down to the first couple of rows, those seats that they have down there, those seats are so up upscale. They're cushioned. They're like lazy boys.
It's a shame.
Okay, and then they charge an arm and a leg for food and what. But see, you can see it's a problem because if you look at certain Yankee games at Yankee Stadium, nobody's hardly in those front row seats.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay, it's the same thing with the Mets. The Mets have luxury boxes. The Mets are getting ready to blow up the neighborhood around City Field. They want to put a casino there and all of this
It's
and
not going to be
Why?
baseball anymore. It's not going to be baseball anymore. It's just going to be gambling.
yeah, and so
I tell you, what my prediction is that eventually the goal is going to be to kind of create these fake characters that you see on television playing the games, but they won't be real. They'll just be run by some sort of algorithm, and
well,
there'll be no stadiums to go to because there'll be no need to have stadiums.
okay. Now, let me tell you this. If you notice the last couple of years when it comes to all, I don't know about basketball, but I know for sure football and baseball, they kind of start showing games almost like a PlayStation or a Xbox game. If you
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
notice, you'll
That
see that
overlay
they'll
thing they do, yeah.
yeah, yeah, where they kind of fuzzy out of focus the crowd.
Yeah.
And,
Hmm.
yeah. So who knows? In my head there, um, that's why, you know, I just try to and like I said, it's a life flow for me and I just try to combine the memories with what's going on currently.
Yeah.
Um, plus baseball, they've messed up. There was a time when there was a difference between the American League and the
Hmm.
National League.
Yeah.
Okay, American League games were a bit longer than National League games. At least they've kind of gotten back to that. The
Hmm.
strike zone was bigger in the American League, while the strike zone in the National League was shorter.
It used to be that the umpires, I think in the National League, used chest protectors and the American League didn't or
Oh
something.
well, yeah,
Remember those?
the National League they wore their chest protector inside their jacket. The American League wore them big sofa cushions. The American League
Yeah, like a
wore-
shield. It was like a shield. The head
yeah,
behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it was a big, it was just cut out where you could put your chin there. And yeah, strike. And also how they used to count attendance.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
forget which one league used to go by tickets sold.
Right.
Oh, the American League went by tickets sold, while the National League went by actual people sitting in the seats.
I
Huh.
thought somebody
Okay.
went by. You know how you used to go in like used to be like going into the subway like a turnstile.
Yeah,
So it's like turnstile clicks.
Huh.
yeah, yeah. Well, that was probably the National League. They went by actual people coming in, turnstile clicks.
Hmm.
Um, there was a time when you had like veterans in the American League didn't care for veterans in the National League, vice versa. When Rafael Santana went from the Mets to the Yankees, Billy Martin just tolerated him.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, so all of this,
You got the designated hitter in both leagues now. Even
yeah,
the National League used to make fun of the American League for having a
yeah,
DH.
yeah, and that's why players near the end of their career, like Hank Aaron, went to the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yep.
Because he could still play.
Without
All of
hitting,
that,
without playing in the field. So now
yeah,
that's all that's different now.
all of that is different now. All of that has been thrown away. At one point, they would talk about realignment.
Hmm.
They were talking about some owners were talking about putting the Mets and the Yankees in the same division.
God, please no.
Yeah, and mind you, they're still talking about it because see, they want to expand. They want to expand again. They want to
Well,
put it.
well, if
Yeah,
that's the case, it doesn't sound like expansion. It sounds like a reduction to me. So it's like certain cities are going to have teams, and certain cities aren't. I mean, you already have the fact that you can't see a baseball game on normal television,
right.
and God forbid. Now, as far as basketball is concerned, like I like Lenny Kravitz. You know, I'm a fan, but he's at a Knick game. I never seen him at a Knick game before, and so you have all these people showing up, celebrities showing up at Knick games and all that because it's a hot ticket.
Hot ticket.
A ticket costs. They said a ticket for the last Knick game in the second row costs like $20,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah. And
so you're
see,
not going to watch it. It's not for regular people. Sports is not going to be for regular people.
Hmm.
well, well, this is where we're heading to because now they're talking about like I said, they want to expand. They want to pit a team in Nashville and name it after the old Negro League team, the Nashville All Stars. And they also want to pit a franchise in Utah, right? But they're gonna have yeah, Utah. Utah already looked up and has an NHL team by way of Phoenix. But
Yeah,
And
I
they
mean,
got
do
a
you think
basketball
that
team
a basketball team is
by the
going
way of New
to?
Orleans. They said
Yeah,
the Utah Jazz. I mean, understand New Orleans. There's no jazz in Utah. Okay.
I know. Well, they find well with the hockey team that moved from Phoenix, the Phoenix Coyotes that moved to Utah. They're gonna call them the Mammoths,
the what?
the Mammoths, as in woolly mammoth.
Why?
I don't know,
What?
but
Well,
now and see they've talked about contraction because they basically you have some owners that want to get rid of the athletics once and for all. Okay, because the athletics, I hate to say it, have been a dumpster fire for a century now. You know what I'm saying? And they
yeah.
want to get
After Charles Finley finished doing what he did, with,
yeah, and it wasn't just him. It wasn't just him. It was also Connie Mack.
Hmm.
He of sitting in the dugout in his three-piece suit and starch
and a suit on.
and a starch collar.
What the hell?
I take this seriously, like going to work.
Yeah.
It's my job, man.
Look at that. Out of here with that.
Oh God. Yeah, so it's just a lot of craziness.
It's like they take if sports is an outlet for us, right? For emotional outlet,
Hmm.
Right?
and they're taking it from us, and it's only going to be available to certain people in certain
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what's going to happen. I mean, football is making itself very, very available, right?
Hmm.
Well,
But baseball and basketball are becoming exclusive.
yeah. Football. Well, football has surpassed baseball a long time ago as America's pastime. Okay, remember when people used to call baseball America's pastime? You know,
Yeah.
you go, yeah. What? Now, no, football is number one in this country.
It's so
Baseball,
available.
yeah, it's so available. It's so available. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, how can your sport be a pastime when they don't allow people to see it?
that's why they lost that. That's why they lost that moniker. Okay, because they're pricing and phasing out fans. I don't like you. You asked me how they cultivating new fans. I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't
I
know
don't
because
know
everything,
either.
even with collectibles, because right now the baseball card business, it's not for kids these days.
No.
It's it's
Uh-uh.
it's 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 not for kids. Tops, Tops has been taken over by fanatics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not for kids. It's not like you go to the candy store or the discount store or the pharmacy, and you get your pack of tops, and you collect them for the beginning of the year, and then you wait for the traded set near the fall and whatnot. Nah, they don't do that anymore. Now they just come out with you can order the complete set.
Yeah, and it used to be, every house, almost every house I knew had a baseball glove in it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Not anymore.
Not
Or
anymore.
the baseball in it.
Yeah. It's it. I don't know. I just don't know. All I know is that business plan that they have. I don't see it being sustainable at the rate they're going. But you know why? See, here's the down low. The owners don't care. The owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates doesn't care. He doesn't care that he's ran that franchise into the ground to the point, like I said, that you got ushers beating fans with belts.
Why
Yikes.
doesn't he sell it? Why just sell it?
He doesn't because number one, baseball. These major league teams get a lot of money from television contracts. Okay, and whether people are watching it or not, um, places, streaming platforms. Oh my God, Amazon Prime, um, the other Paramount. These streaming platforms, they've gobbled up all the games. That's why
And
people.
also it's a complaint that you hear from the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, that they have to give their money, a part of their money, to these places like the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Bingo,
They have to get share of their
bingo.
money.
That's
So
why.
these are free riders. They're free riders,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah,
they don't they
that's
don't do
why.
anything with their team. They get the
Yeah.
money. They get a boatload of money from all these elite teams, and they
Hmm.
put it directly in their pockets. They don't try to sign any new players.
Nothing. Nothing. They have a picture that's phenomenal with the Pirates now. I think his
Mm-hmm.
Skene, Skeen or something like that.
Skin, yeah, I heard about
Yeah,
skiing.
the
Yeah,
boy is good. Boy is good. He's gonna walk at the end of the year. He's
sure
gonna
he is.
he's gonna walk. Um, I'm surprised. What's his name? Leon McCutcheon or whatever. I'm surprised he came back to the um to the Pirates. I guess because that's where he started his career. But yeah,
He's at
like
the end of his career.
yeah, and
He's at the
and
end of his career.
it's freeloading. It's
Yeah,
that on.
Mm-hmm.
He knows no matter what, he's gonna get his cut. He's gonna get his
yeah,
cut. Plus, I'm quite sure that they probably Major League Baseball probably gets a cut from betting places like FanDuel or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're right. They're just gambling. I guess gambling institutions or something.
And
Yeah,
Because
it's going to cost them a lot less money to make money.
yeah,
What is this? An app or algorithm or something they got running? And that's
yeah.
it.
That's it.
yeah, you take some teams, like you ask yourself, why do they still exist? Like a team in Cleveland, a team in Cincinnati,
Mm-hmm.
a team in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Why did there's some long term Pittsburgh fans and Cleveland fans, generational
Generational.
generational fans. But you got to look at those teams and say, what the hell's going on? Why is the Major League Baseball stepping in like it did with the Montreal Expos and some of these other teams that said, look, this is being mismanaged. We're going to move this team, or you got to turn this thing around, or we're going to move this team, or we're going to close it down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you would figure definitely with the Pittsburgh Pirates, because listen, you and I, we all know that this Pirates organization is not like the Pirates that we grew up with.
No.
Okay, whether it was the '70s or the '90s, this is not
This is not Dave Parker, Willie Stargell, or Manny
right.
Sanguine, or Roberto Clemente. It's not.
And see, to show you how much, speaking of Roberto Clemente, to show
Mhm.
you how eager they are to make money in Pittsburgh, it was a controversy before the belt beating and before the fan falling out the seat. They have at each side of the foul poles, the outfield, they have like the number 21.
Yeah.
Okay, commemorating Roberto Clemente.
Right.
Somebody so hard up to make money that one of the signs they covered up with an advertisement for some type of hard cider or some shit.
Hmm.
And Roberto Clemente's son, okay, was livid.
That's a shame.
You know?
That's a shame.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
shame. And then the thing is, these new people, they don't know why nobody's allowed to wear number 42 on any team. They don't know.
no, they don't.
They don't
They
know
don't
why.
they don't know.
Mhm.
They don't know the history.
They don't know the history.
Even with Roberto Clemente, there was an incident with him when, because actually, and who knows what it could have been, because he was in the
He was
Dodgers farm system.
He was
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah, he was in the Dodgers farm system, and one time in spring training, they went out to eat, the whole team, and the restaurant they went to, they said, we don't serve niggas.
Wow.
And they all came out, and Roberto Clemente said, listen, if y'all go in there and eat and leave me out here, he said, I'm done with y'all.
Yep.
I'm done with y'all. He
Yeah.
said, either y'all with me or y'all against me. So they went with him and found another restaurant, you know.
Hmm.
Because, again, a lot of people don't know. I didn't know until a couple of years ago that he was in the Dodgers farm system.
I didn't know he was in the Dodgers system.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know he was
And,
in Dodgers system.
yeah, you could
They
just
missed out.
imagine. Yeah, But yeah, baseball is, to me, it's almost like the same thing with um, Drum Corps International. Okay, that
Hmm.
was the place for drum and bugle corps to compete and all that. They priced themselves out of everything. Nobody even knows that Drum Corps International even exists.
Hmm.
Do they?
So
They don't want your money.
yeah, and
Maybe
plus
they don't. Maybe they don't want your money.
they well they're kind of like, it's not so much money, but also kind of artistic thing.
Yeah.
Okay, because with Drum Corps International, first of all, you have 7 corps that they call $1 million corps, like the Cavaliers and the Blue Devils out in California. You have to have money to send your kid to with them to compete for the summer. You got to have a couple of $1,000. Okay, it's not like
Hmm.
back in my days when all you had to do is carry a C note on a horn and you was good to go and shit. You know what I'm saying? And also they kind of avant-garded themselves out of existence. They're playing music that nobody can even understand what they're doing half the time. Plus, they've incorporated recorded instruments, keyboards, guitars, voice, vocals. What the fuck?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I'm getting back to baseball though. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know where they're gonna go. I mean,
I think they may be going the way that Penelope said. They may be just become avatars or some screen or
Yeah.
something.
yeah,
Because
who knows?
I can't understand how this is sustainable when you never show up on television. I mean, and
Yeah.
then when you do show up on television, you're in time zones where if you were in New York and trying to watch your team play, or just trying to watch the World Series, period, you're staying up
Yeah.
to like you're 12 o'clock at night.
Well, again, there's a bunch of major league teams that, as long as they're getting money from their TV deal, as long as they're getting money from advertisement, FanDuel, advertising, now teams are letting advertisers put their logos on their shirts.
Yeah,
Okay.
we talked about that
Um.
the other day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Apparently,
I mean,
Abu Dhabi, which I thought was
yeah.
a country, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
You know.
now it's on teams' uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on teams uniform.
That's ridiculous.
I don't know what company Star is, but they're on the Yankee uniform.
It's an insurance company.
See, and that's to me that's blasphemy.
Yeah, it's an insurance company.
Okay, because if there was ever an iconic uniform, that's the Yankee uniform.
I don't think that George the First Steinbrenner would have allowed it.
Oh hell no! Oh hell no! Um, he barely allowed Adidas to paint the exit walls with their logo
Hmm.
in Yankee Stadium, the middle Yankee Stadium. Okay,
And people
so
and people would say, why wouldn't you allow that? You're giving up so much money. But it reminds me of what Penelope said when I said, "Oh, Steinbrenner's going to get ready to sell the Yankees," and she said, "Oh no, he won't.
I said that will
You're not
never
selling."
happen.
no,
I said that
that
will never say. I said the many, I said, the billions of dollars. There are many billionaires, but there's only one owner of the New York Yankees.
yeah, if I think they're basically the highest. They're the franchise that has the highest worth. You know, they're worth, maybe the Cowboys might come close, but
I think the Cowboys may be second or
I think
something,
Cowboys are first. I
and that's
think.
and the Cowboys are first,
I think so.
and they're owned by an old white man.
Yep.
oh well, see that I don't have a problem with him running them into the ground. Okay,
I don't. Me either.
I
Me either.
don't, I don't have a
But the
problem.
thing is though, the issue is this: is that these at least you see the Cowboys on television every week,
Hmm.
regardless of whether you live in New York or Philadelphia. So you see them all the time.
Right.
Now try to watch the Texas Rangers, or try to watch the Houston Astros, or try to watch the Dallas Mavericks. Good luck.
Wow. So it's
I
like
just
that.
Football.
I looked at this statistical thing here from 2024, and it said that the value in billions, like the Cowboys is first, Golden State Warriors is second, Los Angeles Rams is third, and the Yankees are fourth.
What the hell with the Warriors?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know neither. Where that? Whoa, what?
Don't know. This is a Forbes thing, so I don't know.
Because they play in Silicon Valley.
Okay, all right. I'm glad you said Silicon Valley because I'm just thinking the Bay Area.
Yeah, so most
Mhm.
most of their stuff, probably the value of a lot of their stuff is probably the ownership of the real estate that the stadium's on.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
And I give you a little bit of trivia. For a while, the property at Yankee Stadium, the middle Yankee Stadium, I call it, or Yankee Stadium the second, that was owned by the Knights of Columbus.
Really?
Yeah. During the 40s and 50s, they owned the property, the Knights of Columbus. Then I think New York City Parks Department, in fact, I think Robert Moses might have had something to do with the city department,
Mhm.
Parks Department taking over. You
That
know.
guy.
Yeah. Oh, listen,
Hmm.
he's one of the reasons why the Dodgers moved.
Hmm.
Okay, because he had first offered them You see where the Barclays Center is at?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had offered them that property, but Walter O'Malley said no. Then he offered them a spot in Queens, Flushing, which ended up being Shea Stadium, and he said no.
Yeah,
And
near LaGuardia Airport. When you hear that damn noise, that plane noise.
yeah, so he said nah, he's gonna move to it was a Chavez Ravine, which by the way he displaced a lot of people in that neighborhood. Okay. And then he managed to talk Horace Stoneham, the owner of the Giants, to move, and San Francisco did a number on him because they took him out to Candlestick Point, where the new stadium would be, Candlestick Park, but they brought him out there when the wind was calm.
Yeah,
Oh,
poor Willie
wow.
Mays. Poor Willie Mays had to chase the ball to go up in the air, and it would come down like 20 feet from where he planted himself. The wind used to blow the ball all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah, because Horace Stoneham had a bit of a drinking problem.
Okay.
So they, I guess they propped him up and said, they said, look.
But you know what? If that's the case, then Moses got his way, because LaGuardia, when you used to watch Met games on television, the flights from LaGuardia was there. I mean, it was almost embarrassing to hear other cities other announcers talk about how this thing was near the airport and how all this noise. How do you guys deal with that?
No, but see, the real reason why they were complaining about that is the fact that the Mets pitchers used to time when the planes would come over and try to pitch, throw the ball when the planes were just coming over the stadium. So if you're a visiting team, you really don't notice, and it's
Here come
like
a jet.
you know what I'm saying? But yeah, the Mets and actually the Jets used to use LaGuardia to their advantage.
Yeah, the Jets.
Yeah. It wasn't until Keith Hernandez came to the Mets that he was complaining about the Jets, but Keith Hernandez complains about a lot of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah,
so there's no access for baseball,
no.
So if you were a kid growing up today, could you be a baseball fan?
It'd be harder.
You would if you're a parent and you want to get your kids into baseball. It would be hard. It would be hard because first of all, you want to take your kid to see a game.
Yeah.
Okay, my kids loved it when I used to take them to the ball games. Okay, but again, just the prices alone are kind of steep. I remember paying like um $50 for $50 a seat, $53 a seat when I took my friend to Yankee Stadium. Now, one thing I do credit with the Mets, and it's in their blood, is that as long as they've been the Mets, they've always tried to be reasonable. Okay. There are what they call $5 nights at Citi Field, where everything is $5. Then I don't know if they still do it. They had certain weekend dates. They would charge like $3 to sit in the upper decks, like old school. What the Yankees do see, the Yankees are good at putting a Band-Aid on your cut.
Hmm.
Okay, they'll charge you an arm and a leg to get into Yankee Stadium, but the Yankees will. One thing about them is they will give you some,
Hmm.
whether it's a bobblehead doll or a
Ah, yeah,
hockey
that.
jersey or a bat or a ball, souvenirs,
Yeah.
souvenirs, souvenirs galore. Okay.
I think James, I don't think this generation is interested in baseball anymore. I think Penelope was telling the story about the guy who had a Mickey Mantle card,
Hmm.
Yeah. We
and
talk
and
about
he
that.
said basically, yeah, basically he said, he got the Mickey Mantle card. He know it's worth the rookie card. He knows it's worth
Hmm.
millions of dollars, and it said, well, when are you gonna sell it? He said he's gonna sell it when there's a generation that doesn't know who Mickey Mantle is anymore. And so you get people who don't know who Mickey Mantle is, and he sold it.
Yep.
Yeah, and well, see, I would say what deters kids these days from playing baseball also
Hmm.
more than Major League Baseball itself is the fact that you have to you have to pay number one, you have to pay an arm and a leg for equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, gloves and bats and balls are very pricey. Number two, there's really not really any such thing as little league anymore.
Isn't that
yeah,
something?
Okay,
yeah.
now they have these things where you go on like for the summer a road trip
Hmm.
playing baseball in other towns and cities.
Oh
Really?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. It's I forgot the name that they call it, but yeah, there's no real little league. Major League
And there's
Baseball.
no space. There's no
There's no
space.
exactly. Major League Baseball used to have this thing a couple years ago called RBI, where it was a program where they would fix up fields in New York City, and they would supply equipment and have, I guess, community centers or whatever youth organizations teach kids how to play baseball.
Hmm.
I don't know what's happening that program that they had. And then when you look at it, this goes back to really the start of the '80s. All that money you have to pay for baseball equipment, all you have to do is really purchase a basketball once, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And back in the day when we playing in the hood and we
Hmm.
didn't have a basketball court, we get a crate, we take out the
Yeah,
bottom, tie it to a
Hmm.
tree or pole. That's your
yeah,
basketball court.
that's your
Yeah.
basketball court. And see, when I was coming up, our area, Bronx River, we were like a sports mecca because back then bats and balls and gloves were affordable. Okay, then we had James Monroe High School that we used to go sneak up there on the weekends and play baseball and softball and all that. We had the basketball courts in the projects. I can remember even a friend of mine, Johnny Mercado, coming out of his house with hockey stuff on. I'm like, where the hell are you going
That's
playing
great.
Yeah.
hockey? He
That's
said,
great.
nah, we going to play hockey up at PS 77's yard, the middle yard. I
Mm.
said, really? Come to find out, they used to get up there, but they would use number one, they would use roller skates instead of
Yeah, I've seen
skates,
that. Yeah.
and
Roller
they would
skate.
they would use back then a orange practice ball that hockey
Mm.
players would use, and but
Mhm.
somebody in their house would hold the net. We had the net, and they play hockey. So we played in my neighborhood. We played off for sports, but again, baseball is pricing
Yeah,
people
it's
out.
price. You can't see it and you can't play it. I mean, back in the day, we played baseball. we played on fields that were, you know, horrible. They're
Mm.
full of rocks. They had, you know, it's like they had all kind of junk in it. You know, it's an empty lot basically, where a building used to be, and now they tore the building down. So there's like bricks in the dirt. So someone would hit a ball and would hit a hit a brick or a stone or some other thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you would have to
Somebody's
take it.
false teeth.
Yeah, or you have to take it by your, you know, and I think that's why a lot of Dominican players and
Uh-huh.
why they're so good, because the fields they play on are so horrible.
Hmm.
The
Yeah,
fields they play on
well,
are horrible, and so they're so good. Their range is so good, and what they do is because their playing conditions are so bad, and so when they come and play on an American field, it's like, you got to be kidding. This is so easy. This is so much easy to compared to what I used to play on, and
yeah.
that's what it used to be with black ball players.
They used to. I don't think they do it now, but in the Dominican Republic, they would use like coffee cans as gloves.
Yeah,
Mm.
You
yeah,
know, and just like just like Mobile, Alabama was a hotbed for black major league players.
Mm-hmm.
There was a town called in Dominican Republic called San Pedro de Macia.
Mm-hmm.
A good portion of Dominican baseball players in Major League Baseball came from that town, you know, and shit, they would be playing baseball barefoot, you know,
Wow.
yeah. So,
and
you know, give me some
and
cleats and give me a glove.
yeah,
Yeah.
and see, another thing is we don't in this country we kind of don't look at baseball as our bread and butter
Mm-hmm.
to get us out of the hood as they do it in DR or
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela, you know, because
Right.
you're having a lot of Venezuela. If there's been a shift over the years of hotbeds of baseball in the United States. During the '80s, you had a lot of white baseball players coming from California,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
a lot,
Florida, and
and
Florida.
Florida. Yeah,
Hmm.
so it's been a shift. Before that, you had a lot of white baseball players coming from the South or
Mm-hmm.
the Midwest, and then the early baseball, like the 19th and turn of the century, you had a lot of white baseball players coming from New England,
Hmm.
you know,
And that
and
stopped long ago, because I don't.
oh yeah,
But
that
that's the thing,
Do
you know,
you are you
what these new
aware?
demographics and why.
Yeah,
You
are you
know,
aware of any? Are you aware of any baseball players currently playing or recently played from the New York area? Because I don't know any.
okay. Going back when I was in PS 77, you go into class and you know we still had the wooden desk, and somebody had carved Ed Kranepool was here. Okay, and that Ed Kranepool came from the Bronx.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, and across the street you had Hank Greenberg from the went to the Tigers that played for the Tigers. He came from James Monroe. Years later, of course, my cousin went to class school in '77 with Bobby Bonilla.
hmm.
Um,
But
Stanley,
that's so few and far between. I
yeah,
mean,
I know.
we have football players and basketball players. You know, the Brooklyn, the New York point guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
such a ubiquitous term, but you don't have. I feel sorry for baseball now that we start
Well,
talking about.
see, number one,
But the
basketball.
thing, but this is, you know, as you used to say, self-inflicted wounds. I
Yeah.
mean, they could do contracts where they're putting baseball on television during prime time.
And
They just don't do it.
The thing of Penelope is this, you know, like James said, people don't see it as their ticket out of the hood. But the thing
All right.
is, the most
But how can you see
lucrative,
it as your ticket out of the good, but you don't get to see it at all?
but the most lucrative contracts,
Well,
the
see,
most
that's
lucrative contracts are in baseball, and they're
Yeah.
long term. You could be playing baseball till you in your 40s.
yeah.
Nobody has a better contract or higher price contract than Juan Soto.
Yeah, and see, it's pretty much a portion of that money is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Okay, with football contracts are very. I don't. I can't think of any guaranteed football contract right now.
No, they're
But
not.
No.
see, what it is that just like football is America's pastime, basketball is the city game.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it's
Again, you don't.
what's your length? What's your
You
length of career? You know, you could be
okay?
playing.
I
Well,
mean, because
on the
people look at somebody like LeBron right now. He's like an outlier.
now,
He
He
is.
that long.
He is out there.
Yeah.
yeah, they came out with this information a couple of years ago. On the average, NBA player's career is like maybe 4 years.
Wow.
We're not talking about stars. We're talking about the average
Average ball player before
ball
they have to
player.
go overseas or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Average kind is 4 years.
That's
For
incredible.
for football, I think it's like maybe 3 years.
Yeah, I figured it'd be less. It's
Yeah.
the wear and tear on the body.
Yeah. Um, with baseball, I'm not sure, but you have a lot of people toiling
Hmm.
in the minor leagues for years before they come up for, as they say, a cup of coffee.
Hmm.
I think with hockey players, it's about the same as football. And see, with hockey, 80% of of NHL players are from Canada. That's their bread and butter.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, that's their bread and butter. Um, what's his name that played? I think his name was Murdoch for the Rangers. He used to break in and burglarize people's houses.
What?
He was up in Canada robbing people, breaking in their
Are
house and
you
stealing
kidding?
stuff. And when he
In
got
between
caught,
games.
no, not even he gave, but when he got caught, when he got arrested, and he came between a judge in front of a judge, the judge said, "Listen, you got two choices:
Yeah.
either go to jail or
Hmm.
concentrate on your hockey." Okay, those are only two choices.
When
Now,
was this?
this was years ago. This was a while back. Murdoch
Okay.
played with the Rangers, I think, back in the late '70s. But still, I hate
Yeah.
to say, but some of the hockey players, they're not the brightest star in the galaxy.
No, no, but you know what though? The thing that the I think if you had to pick the more intelligent example of athlete, I would think that it seems to me at least the baseball player is more intelligent than all the other professional sports.
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because, well,
I mean,
yeah,
they just seem more. Yeah, they I mean they get better interviews. They're well spoken. I don't know. It seems like basketball and football. You get your random athlete from wherever, and
yeah, yeah.
I don't know why that is.
Well, you might want to not include DJ LeMahieu with the Yankees because
I'm not.
he's he's man of very few words. It,
Yeah, but he don't say much because he, probably not that well spoken. But you get someone, you get people who like Aaron Judge or Juan Soto, which is what I was mad at Saturday Night Live because they tried to do a parody of Juan Soto.
hmm
It had them speaking. They had a guy speaking. Number one, his skin color was too light, and number
hmm
two, he was speaking like a stereotypical. He was talking like Ricky Ricardo or something like that,
Oh,
And
And that's not what Soto sounds like.
that's not how Juan Soto looks, and that's not how he sounds.
Yeah.
He sounds exactly like Carl Anthony Towns sounds.
And it's such a stereotype and it's offensive.
It was
yeah.
offensive to me. And it was offensive to me. It was offensive that Hispanic actor on Saturday Night Live would do that.
Without even knowing who Juan Soto is. Why would you do
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. And they rehearsed it because
Yep.
it's a rehearsed bit. And so he
Yep.
could go online and ever see Juan Soto
See, what
speak.
does Juan Soto sound like? What does he look like?
It's
He might
better
have
for you to
said,
have.
you know what? And he might have said, hey, maybe some of the black guys do it.
Well, like Kenan Thompson and another black
Yeah.
guy on Saturday Night Live. They could have done it, and they could have spoke like Juan Soto,
Right.
and it would look more like Juan Soto. It almost sounded like that awful stereotype that what's his name used to do on Saturday Night Live. Baseball has been very, very good to me.
Oh yeah.
I hated that thing.
Yeah,
But you know what? Okay, on the way. Okay, you hated it, but I'll tell you, to me, I didn't. The reason why I didn't is because all the time when you see a lot of these, television shows and things coming out of, countries, Hispanic countries, they act like there's no black Hispanic people. No dark skinned
But I hate
black
they talk
Hispanic
like that
people.
though.
But I'm just saying that. But I mean, I see with the accent and everything. But I'm saying that there are some people that do have an accent like that. But if they did, it said they would act like there's nobody who has dark skin that's a black person that is Hispanic.
well, I got I got news for you. I guess maybe the Mets might have liked him because actually one time they had a old timers day at Shea Stay, I think the early '80s, and they actually had Garrett Morris recreate that character. He came out on the field in the Mets uniform. And,
Yeah, I hated that character, man.
yeah,
I wasn't. I didn't feel the same way you did.
I hated it.
But I guess the only reason why I feel the same differently is because I originally from South Florida, and whenever they have their little channels and stuff, and the Dominicans, Cubans, whatever the stuff that's coming over from whoever, they act like black Latino people don't exist. So I didn't have a problem with it because I know they exist. I see them all the time. But they put, in their media, they act like you don't exist.
well, for a while, that's how some teams in Major League Baseball got around the integration issue. Okay,
well, see, that don't make no sense to me. So you mean somebody that looked like Roberto Clemente, or somebody that looked like Bernie Williams, or somebody that looked like Sammy Sosa? Is he's not black. He's fully
no. Well, see, this shows you how deep the racism is with this place, in that you could get case in point, the first black baseball player for the Chicago White Sox was Minnie Minoso.
Yeah.
Right? Minnie Minoso was, for lack of a better word, blue-black.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they got around it because they said, "Oh, well, he's Spanish, he's Cuban," and for some reason in America, they will accept you if you're dark skinned but you don't speak English, or at least they'll accept you for a certain amount of time. Okay, because that's what used to happen down south. Okay, if it was a foreigner from another country and they was dark complexion, they would
they would say just no African Americans.
Right. Right.
Because they'd be doggone if you jump into their sport and do something better than them. After all this time, they set their boot on your neck.
Yeah,
they were not going to let that happen.
So that's how, and it was another team that got away with that too. I can't recall, but that's how, I guess you could say, a lot illogical and crazy.
Yeah, the problem is though, check with Roberto Clemente, where they wouldn't let him, eat in that restaurant.
Yeah. Exactly. And I'm quite sure Rico Cardi.
Yeah, Rico Cardi.
Yeah. Although to this day, I still wonder what did him and Excuse me. What did him and Hank Aaron get in? What was they arguing about that they got into a fist fight on the plane?
I don't know what happened.
I don't know. I don't know. I got to research that some more. This said they was heading to some city and him and Rico had issues. you
Wow.
know, but yeah, getting back to baseball, I don't know.
It's killing itself.
Yeah, it basically is because look at the silliness with the athletics. You
Mhm.
know, they
That's a
talk.
good. That's a professional baseball team that
Yeah,
has a salary, it has a name, it has a franchise, and is playing on a picnic ground.
playing on a
Mhm.
picnic ground. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you
exactly.
know, you may like it, it makes looks nice and everything, but it has that what they're playing on right now has absolutely nothing to do with professional baseball.
Well,
mean,
and really, it's with the athletics. Like I said, they've been a dumpster fire since the days of Connie Mack. Because
Mhm.
see, what put them in the hole is Connie Mack didn't want to change with the times. Okay, obvious. His ass is sitting on the bench in a three-piece suit.
Yeah.
Okay, he might as well have also had a walking stick and a monocle or something and some
Mhm.
spats.
but Chuck Finley, I mean, with the uniforms and the white and the
Right.
gold and the green, that was you know that was cool back in the
Yeah,
day, man.
but he was part of the problem too, because you move on from Connie Mack, then they moved to Kansas City. When they were the Kansas City Athletics, the owner was good friends with the Yankees, and the Kansas City Athletics basically became the Yankees farm team.
Which I had no problem with.
I know you wouldn't. I wouldn't either. Okay. Anytime a top prospect or a promising player would come up on the KC, the Yankees would make a trade. In
That's
fact,
how they got Roger Maris, and I think they had
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So then they moved from Charlie Finley took over, brought the team, transferred them to Oakland. Now he was good in that he would try to make innovations in baseball, like an orange baseball, and then you had the rabbit pop up next to home plate with extra balls for the umpire, and,
I don't remember that one, but
and the designated runner. I think that was UL Washington, but he didn't want to pay his players.
no.
Okay, he didn't want to pay his players, and you remember the controversy at the '73 World Series because he was in a dispute with this infielder. I think his name was Jack Andrews, and he told the manager to bench him, and it was such an uproar that the A's players got into it, and even the Mets players got into it, and he had to relent and reinstate it. He didn't, and then when he felt that he didn't want to spend money, that's when he started letting the players go to free agency.
Yeah,
Jackson,
and people don't
Holzman,
remember that.
right?
But people don't remember that before Reggie Jackson hit the Yankees, he was in Baltimore.
Yeah, for 1 year. For 1 year, 1 year he's like, nah, I can't do this.
And then
Then,
of course Catfish Hunter
hmm
and all that. But I think that unless baseball changes ways, it's going to become what Penelope said, some avatar on a betting platform or
Yeah.
something.
well, again, they're not cultivating new fans. Maybe in New York, between the Yankees and the Mets, they've cultivated new fans.
Yeah.
Okay, but cities like Pittsburgh and even oh my God, which I don't understand what's going on in St. Louis.
Hmm.
Okay, the Cardinals are having problems with attendance. That maybe it's kind of
People don't. We have to figure out people like money. Who can afford those tickets these
well.
days.
That's the problem. That's the problem. People
Mhm.
can't afford it. Like I said,
Well,
when
guys,
I went,
I'm going to say something, but I'm looking at the clock, man. We've been on for a little while.
Yep.
Yeah. So
So,
we've got
this is a
somebody.
very interesting,
It is a great interesting
topic. And,
Yeah.
like I said, watching the news, all I see is a bunch of, sad things or things that are meant to make you sad. So,
yeah, well, again, that's what it's about. You got to turn to whether you're a White Sox fan, Yankee fan, Mets, Cardinals. This this is the um time of year where you concentrate at it, so you don't lose your sanity with
Right.
what's going on in the
Absolutely.
world. You don't lose
Absolutely.
your sanity,
Yeah.
and I just go back and forth between watching games from the past and watching
Mm-hmm.
highlights of now.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, play ball, some iconic and lesser known tales of baseball in the NYC. We thank you so much for joining us here with your urbane prospect
Urbane
in
Prospect.
Gotham.
And I would
Gotham.
say, if you could catch Kindness Corners on YouTube,
Yeah.
check out Kindness Corner.
All right. Yeah. Okay, very good. Lovely. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful remainder of your weekend. For those of you all who are in places like Florida celebrating the 20th of May, have a happy 20th of May. And moving into what next week is what was it? Do we have a holiday coming up next on the 26th?
Isn't it like Memorial Day?
Yeah, coming up on the 26th. So yeah, think about what you're going to be doing for Memorial Day in New York City. So we'll catch you all next week. Take care of yourselves and good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Put it in the books, as they say on the Mets broadcast.